5 p.m. so we can go ahead and get started. We'll call the meeting to order. Do we have share virtual Vice President?
Is Pat with us?
She is. I'm trying. Sorry, guys. I'm not able to get rid of that little dotted thing. That's what I'm trying.
Okay. I just wanted to see if she was here to see. I know we're quorum either way, but we are going to start right into our, I believe our curriculum presentations. Is that right?
Indeed.
Okay. And I think we have math and social studies up first. Is that right?
We have several things. So
Okay.
tonight you're gonna have an opportunity to look at some of the fun things going on in our building. So for some of these folks, it's been a 2-year process getting started through these curriculum adoptions. We're gonna start with Mark Harris at the middle school. He'll be talking about social studies and math. Sonia Miller from the high school will be talking about world languages. And Mike Lippert will finish up today also talking about social studies at the high school. So part of our process is teachers and buildings find the curriculum, they vet the curriculum, and they find those materials that work best for their kids at their ages based on the technology needs we have at the building. So it should be a fun 45 minutes, and we'll start with Mr. Harris.
Thank you, ma'am.
And I'm going to ask you to just hold for 1 second.
Of course, whatever Tracy asks for.
You are a wise man.
Those are words I always like to live by.
We have found that to work well.
Yes.
He's trying to get rid of the thing
Gosh.
all over the screen.
All right, well.
Where did Bo go? Where did Bo go?
Oh, Mr. Harris.
Oh,
Oh,
Mr.
he
Harris.
just pushed on, got it. All right. You saved the day. You've already got brownie points. Okay.
Here.
Okay.
So you only had 5 screens. Maybe there was a 6th one.
All right, now I shall pull up your presentation. Share. Oops.
Did not go.
One more time. Looks good enough.
There we go. Then hit that little clock.
Yes,
remember?
thank you.
Thinking about it, you know. We'll see. Tracy will play with that, but we're talking curriculum at the middle school. So let's, where this starts from is my first year here, and the recognition and realization that middle school really was an entity in and of itself. It was being treated as something separate than the secondary education. And so the elementary was often a continuation, or we were a continuation of it, or the middle school had something they selected entirely independent of either level. For me at that point, I'm thinking, can't keep moving forward this way. And with the powers that be at that point in time, we pointed out that the high school had made a decision relative to English after the middle school had made a decision, and now they were not aligned. And that didn't flow too well for our kids. We realized the fact that we got kids grade 6, 7, and 8. Yes, it's that chaos time in a kid's life, but it's really an opportunity before credits become critical and they begin to form a transcript. We had an opportunity in middle school to rehearse with curriculum, and whatever pieces might be different as a transition, we could get through that curriculum piece, and the children might have a better chance of being successful as they hit the ground running in high school. So first that came out with ELA, and then we realized that math had already taken the journey down, going a different route than we had at the time. We were at that point a continuation of what was happening at the elementary schools, as opposed to that jump start of what's happening at the high school. So what we did was kind of move forward and say, you know what, we really should be part of their conversation so our kids can get ready and perform at the high school level and beyond. That'll make their transition much smoother for them. It makes sense if we're offering algebra potentially for our kids, and they are using the high school curriculum, why wouldn't we offer that for the other kids in our building? So our team took on that and said, we'd love to pilot that piece. The district went, go for it, see how it turns out. It makes sense for you to do that. Our team went forward and they reached a point where they realized there's some value in that for sure, but they also recognize they've got some work ahead of them. So I don't want to convince anybody that they're a done deal. They're going to get to the point where they have to, and Trace, it's not working, so you know.
Try. There we go. And, but it's not working for that.
There you go. they're going to get to the point where they recognize some alignment. It does give us an opportunity now to talk about which state standards we hit at which time, if we're with the same curriculum. It wasn't necessarily designed for Washington state standard sequencing in mind. So we keep that as a conversation point. Our teachers went through the curriculum this year and found it to be useful and something they could work from, but they do recognize that they're going to have to really go through those power standards and have a conversation about what is covered when and are we okay with, and then having a continuation conversation with the folks at the high school. So being the same curriculum, it does lend itself to future conversations about professional development where the middle school and high school math teams could be sitting together and talking about what our kids need through the entire process, so that not only they're collegiate ready, but they're also as math savvy and literate as they possibly can be, regardless of what choices they make in life. So hopefully we're on the right pathway there. Nope.
Okay.
Yep, there we go. So for you guys, what does it mean? The high school team is a year ahead of us, so they had already committed to a 6-year buy-in. And when Donna researched for us and we went through their consultants, can we piggyback? Can we connect our contracts up so that all of secondary works together? And Carnegie's working with us, and so we're going to go to that point where we've got a 5-year contract for our portion, and that'll align us with the high school. So next time the board is asked to look at math curriculum and where it goes from here, you'll be talking about all of secondary, not just the high school and middle school separately. So that's our piece. What it's going to run, about $104,000 for a 5-year contract. So that's, I think you have detailed numbers of where that breaks out and parts and pieces. Our group is interested in the professional development that they have not fully had yet, and they don't know where that's going to end up yet, but that's what they're looking forward to. On the social studies front, we're at a different place. And thanks to the high school team, we're basically the car. They were the horse. Those guys did all the heavy lifting and heavy work. You know, part of the joining them and being part of the conversation, Mike, as you're going to hear, and his team did a bunch of work to find the things that fit them. And we asked, can we dive in on some of that work? And we started with the curriculum that the company provided for middle school, hoping it would be as positive as the ones that the high school was reviewing. For us, though, it very much was antiquated. It was updated photographs and some of the things there, but women, people of color, indigenous peoples, they were secondary. They weren't part of the fabric of the language that was within the books. And we thought, as we're going, this is a 7+ year journey. That's not a wise decision on our part to continue to propagate that conversation in that manner. So we paused and said, can we go look, see if there's something else out there? As it turned out, my department chair, Mary Himley, had been working with Active Classroom before she came to the building, and she had a background in them. I don't know if any of you have experienced, but there's a company called Interact that used to create simulations that went with a lot of different disciplines. Active Classroom is the product of that group. And as we move forward from there, that's where we're going now. Savas may not match up for us. It might be perfect for the high school, but for us, we'd like to try Active Classroom as an option. So Donna, instead of saying, yeah, you got to make a commitment and decide what to do this spring, recommended we proceed with a full pilot of that materials come the fall. The positive for me is that they're the first company that's actually offered us a Washington state curriculum. Up to this point, it's either been teacher manufactured, or there's some things, frankly, again, quite outdated and antiquated, not the best way we would approach that. These guys are offering a full package. They've just completed the creation of the course, so we'll be one of the first schools to try it in the pilot this fall. So we're pretty excited about that part. We hope that what comes from it is at each grade level, each quarter, that the teachers end up getting there. No,
You the next one?
it's that clock, yeah. Just so they're not bored. Anyway, what our teachers were hoping to do is they sit down and have a professional conversation and start to identify which of the simulations work as a great assessment. I'll give you Mary's test run example this time around. She taught all the components of both geography and how that impacts human development and groupings in terms of population, resources, and so on. She started to talk about systems of government. She had a variety of things she covered with her 6th grade. And then the culminating project was a simulation where the kids at their table became a country. And each country was allotted different resources. They had to develop alliances and develop treaties. They had to come up with their own constitution, flags, and traditions that went with those countries. it was a great opportunity for the kids to show how they understood the interconnectivity of what Mary had taught at that point. And our hope is that this pilot that we do this fall will show that the other materials they have at the other grade levels come up with something equally engaging that the kids walk away from and remember probably for the rest of their life. So that's our target, and that's what we're aiming for. This one's going to cost a little over 11,000 for the pilot. It also seemed like the most logical price point for us to have a conversation. They're going to provide us in this first round 2 different trainings with the materials. But the nice part with this company is our teachers can actually sit down and go through their entire catalog and build what elements go in the course. So if we start to look at what we would like our 6th graders to deal with, we could choose to make the focus of first semester, for example, Indigenous peoples of the Americas. And they would help us find the parts and pieces that fit together to create that curriculum. We could make the next one all about colonialism. And we could take that on a global scale, not just what happens in the Americas, but then that could be the focus. So it gives our social studies teachers some tools to bring together more than just the small pieces that potentially past curriculum has offered. We're kind of excited, don't know where it'll go, but that's my responsibility come the fall to come back and let you know how that goes. And that's the message.
Do we do questions now or do we wait for questions?
Question, is that, yeah, questions?
Okay, I do have a few.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, I was looking at this earlier today and a couple of questions. First about the math. Is that going to include, there's a computer aspect to that?
There is.
Mathia?
Yeah.
And that's sort of, I'm familiar with the ALEX program, which is used, was used in my old program that was really oriented towards helping students at their own level and help them move along in a very intuitive kind of way.
Yeah.
So this would be is that?
It's similar to that, and I would say at this point, having a daughter who's going through algebra at the moment in the middle school, watching her, there are times where she's used the system and she gets frustrated because it's not the right answer. I know it's this one, and she ends up working her way backwards, rereads pieces and parts, and it most often guides her to the answer. And I hear, never mind, I figured it out.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the fact that the Mathia is helping. I think we had that sort of with iReady, but it was really geared towards their curriculum, not necessarily to the standards that were being set out. So I think this is more adaptable for our staff.
Would you ever think about having like a parent math night or something to help parents sort of learn about this as their kids are struggling with Mathia? Or you
Well,
already
we're
do
playing
that?
with a grant right now. So here's the grant that is there, and our staff has it in front of them. My SEL team does, my math team does, and my English team do. And they don't know how much I have, quote, in my pocket for each of them. But I said, it's COVID, break the rules, come up with something that never has been thought of before, and let's go after it. We might be able to provide those materials for you to do that. The ELA group are looking at specific literature choices that might expand their opportunities or choices for kids that are maybe more up to date and match our kids' interests and or a broader scope of peoples that might be represented. But the math department is looking at STEM things and game pieces that help drive math awareness and ability. Part of that is they're looking at the STEM maybe for at least once a quarter, having a STEM project that is part of an assessment again, where kids are going to do hands-on all math. It's either project driven or that game kind of design. So will we pull in parents? We just had our first dance after forever. So that group, this building hasn't had parents involved in it forever. So, because I asked Vince and he can't remember the last time they had a PTA or a PTO or a booster group at the middle school. Well, we now have a group of parents who call themselves, I call them alphas. And they put on the 7th and 8th grade dance brilliantly this last Saturday. Part of the caveat to doing that was I said, I need you to commit some of your 7th grade parents to being part of us long-term. And part of that will be trying to pull them into those kinds of things, math night being among those. We're also talking about parents' education relative to how do you work with an emerging teenager? How do you set standards and protocols for what happens in your house, particularly in the age of technology?
Yeah, yeah, great. I think that the only other thing I wanted to mention was when you were talking about the social studies, just to make a plug here is
Sure.
I'm with the League of Women Voters, and we actually have a textbook called The State We're In, which is very up to date and very new. And in fact, the Crescent School District just got a grant from the League of Women Voters to fund copies of that book, and they're going to integrate that into their curriculum.
Okay.
It's a, that's a standalone. It isn't part of a larger curriculum, but it might be something worth looking at.
Well, I think that part of the world curriculum, we're no longer going after the textbook.
Yeah.
It's the thing, the beast that we hired for 7+ years, right? So looking for the pieces or ancillary components that go part of that structure, we're definitely moving that direction for sure.
Well, I'll bring you a book to look at.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you.
Yep.
Director Jeffers?
Yeah, look at the curriculum, the math curriculum. I look more closely probably at the high school curriculum when they were adopting it.
Sure.
And yeah, I think Mathia and everything that Carnegie offers is great, nice and pretty.
Okay,
I want results,
okay,
because if you look at for whatever good, bad, ugly, the test scores and things show about math in this district is pretty low as far as percent at grade level, percent meeting standards is very low.
yep, math is always a difficult piece. It's a conversation where that's a language not spoken at home.
Right.
You know, as we talk here, we're doing English every second.
So
of
how
every
are
day.
how will your new pretty books?
I don't know that the new pretty books in and of themselves will get it accomplished. I think a commitment from us as a building and district is the only way we're going to get there. I think you can use the SBA as one way to measure success. I would talk to my high school colleagues and they'd go, well, graduation rates is another one, success through classes. But I would argue there's more out there for you to look at as a board. You should probably look at the success rate of our kids who do enroll in college. How many of them are taking high school level math or English classes their first year out? Are swim kids better prepared than other kids? I don't know that you guys take that lens, but as an ex-high school person, I very much was interested in, if my kids graduated and I said they were math ready, did they get to go straight into college math, or were they having to take a high school level math class on their dime when we thought they were ready?
And do we have that data?
I don't have it at my fingertips
Yeah,
because
we
that's
can-
not my focus.
Well, I'll talk to Sean, see if we can't get.
But as we come back, that might be a piece where, another place, graduation rates, SBA, and I think that how successful kids are beyond their time with us are ways.
Because
for
I
us to
think
look at our
that
success.
evidence-based proof that what we're doing is working and that we're getting better.
Larry, I think it's just a lot of that is the different pathways to graduation. Now, kids don't have to take the test. So we have a smaller population taking the test, and it's not necessarily, so I'll pull some data between our school and other schools of kids who take the test.
Does that mean we don't need to improve?
No, we always need to. I work at Grey Wolf. We always need to improve. Okay, we're always looking to get better.
Right.
But I think it takes some time to get the content and the curriculum going. I think Brian's point's a great one. If this is what we're going to look at moving off of Eureka at middle and high school, that Carnegie gives kids 6 or 7 years worth of time to look at that.
So whatever metrics we use, I'd like to see evidence of improvement on all those. And also there's a big fall off from elementary in math, elementary, middle school,
Of course.
high school.
And I would argue, anybody looked at that, I'd go, well, they have math for 2.5 hours a day at the elementary school. With us now, they go to an hour or less. So we have a transition that we need to pay attention to, the fact that that's happening in just the sheer amount of time we give to mathematics. The other would be, we took them out of a family setting in the elementary school, and we told them they've got 6 different bosses. So that's a radical change for children. So you should always expect that there's a drop off from elementary to middle school, but you should be looking at that point, wherever we finish or start with them at middle school. Now you should start to ask for that demand or rise to get back to that target where ideally we're all shooting for 80%. But if we don't get there, yeah, we got work to do.
Because we're quite a bit less than 80% of them.
We are, and if you look at the most recent ones, those are impacted by COVID. So at this point,
I'm going
that's
by previous
forget that.
history. I
No,
assume
I-
nothing really has changed.
for sure. No, I hear you. We have to see what this next generation will do and where we go from here now that we have every kid has a one-to-one. A lot of pieces have changed in just the 3 years since.
And my other concern, especially in math, is there's a definite demographic gap
Yep.
that in our district that's
Yep.
pretty noticeable. And hopefully the new curriculum or whatever.
Yeah, and it depends on what time frame you look as to where the demographic plays out most. For me, I look at the middle school level, and girls by 8th grade start to drop off compared to where they should have been and based on where they were at a younger grade. So that's a demographic for me that leaps off the page.
Right.
So,
Well, there's another one, but white and Hispanic, there's a big gap. So I
That's an
think we need to
ongoing
look
one.
at,
That's an
we need to
ongoing
look
gap.
at that gap on them and then decide how we can close those gaps.
We do, and I think that's a conversation for a broader one, Larry, about EL and where we go with language.
Want to make sure that we stay right on track with time here because we have 3 different presentations and then a little bit of time for questions after, but want to make sure I don't want to cut off other presentations. We do have that hard stop at 6 o'clock. So,
And this is perfect segue to Sonia
okay.
Miller and our EL, or not EL, world languages.
They just drop off some good, heavy, old-fashioned textbooks.
All right.
So you have something to look at, pass on down if you wish.
Speed read through.
I am Sonia Miller. I am a world language teacher at the high school. I teach both sign language and Spanish. This presentation is on the review and hopeful adoption of Spanish materials only, not American Sign Language materials. I have to stand in one place.
Oh.
This is not my strength.
Pointer, sorry, I'm pointing at the pointer.
Not my strength. Okay, and directions, the big button.
There we go.
There we go. Perfect. Let's see. Spanish last presented in front of the board in 2007. That was the last time we had new materials. At that time, we adopted Descubre 1, 2, and 3 by Vista Higher Learning Incorporation. Spanish 4 was a very small program in 2007, and we got soft copies of a magazine called Revista at that time. I've been teaching with those materials since 2008 when they came into our district. I've had loads and loads of years to figure out what the strengths are of the textbooks that we have, what the weaknesses are, and not just personally either, but we work very hard as a tiny department to make sure that what we're teaching is well aligned to both state and national standards. One of our joys is our state and national standards are 100% aligned, which a lot of departments can't say, because what the state did was say, we like those, we're adopting those word for word. Our state standards are identical to the national standards, which makes it really easy. The other thing that we started doing in 2014 was not just basing our progress on how we felt about the kids we had, the grades that we had, anecdotal feedback from kids, but we started pushing out our students taking what's called locally as the Stamp 4S test, which is a nationally recognized test that levels students by what they should have learned after 1, 2, 3, and 4 years. We can test students in, I think, 17 different languages. By and large, our students take the Spanish language test. They're welcome to take it after any number of years that they want, and those that make it all the way to AP, which is now our 4th-year program, highly encouraged to take it. 2 years ago, in addition to the Stamp 4S test, we also started going after what's called global cred. We have so many high achievers. We have a number of students that after taking 4 years of Spanish don't just deserve national recognition for 4 years of Spanish, but that they're entering college or the workforce at a working fluency level. So when we look at curriculum review, we're looking at it through our own lens. What we're interested in, we're looking at it through the national standards, the state standards, and then again, how are our kids faring based on the way we're teaching and their learning compared to these nationally recognized tests. See if I missed anything here. Oh, okay, so based on what we're currently using, one of the things that we've discovered in the last 14 years is that the books that we have are very heavy on grammar, which is a great start when we're getting in it. It probably matches very well with if you took Spanish, what you learned. You probably can all still conjugate, even if it's not a verb. I can conjugate just about anything. You just give me a word and I can put the on endings on just about anything. And our textbooks are really good at teaching conjugation. They're really good at teaching grammar. And what we found that we needed to do, supported both by standards and the national testing that we do, is supplement heavily. Because there's no test out there that still wants kids to conjugate. It's not really that worthwhile of a skill. What we want kids to be able to do is read, write, understand, and communicate on an appropriate level. After 4 years of studying high school Spanish, a student should be able to be dropped in just about any Spanish-speaking country and be at the survival level. They can go out, they can get all their basic needs met, and our high-achieving students shouldn't be able to just do that, but they should have enough skills to go in a Spanish-speaking country and pick up an entry-level job. The textbooks that we have cannot do that. They learn to conjugate super duper well. So it's been a lot of supplementing. And so when we were looking at an eye towards what else is there out there, we were looking for how can we make our jobs easier? Because it's a great grammar, and grammar is a very small part of what we still do today. We've put out tremendous amount of our own personal budget to buy literature books for students to read, written grants. SEF has been, just a huge supporter of helping us acquire more novels for our kids so that we could read. High school was very gracious in sending us all to training, sending to the conference room over here so that we could do online training in how to improve our skills in understanding speaking standards and writing standards. And it had a huge positive impact after going through the training on our students' test scores and their ability to earn their seals in time for graduation. So again, what we were looking at is what can we do to make our lives easier? Because we're such a tiny department, our goal every year is to have only 3 preps going into the following year. It is not uncommon that we're teaching 4 different subjects out of a 5-period teaching day. So I don't know if you're familiar with the lingo, we call them preps. And when you have a textbook that teaches grammar and doesn't teach anything else, it's a lot of prep. So we were looking for what's going to help us out. We were given 2 half days to go through the materials. In addition to going through the materials, we sent out some blasts in some of the blogs that we belong to, what are there other districts using. Donna was very helpful and also supplying us with information on what other districts were using, got information back, make sure we had those materials. And then within our classes, we took all of the textbooks and figured out, okay, what is the basic, the one I use, for example, because I have first year Spanish this year, is how does each textbook tackle venir, which means to come. And so then I divided the kids up into groups, gave them a textbook, gave them a textbook and said, go for it. And I don't care just about how well they come out knowing how to conjugate venir, because I already knew which textbook was going to win for that. But what could they do with it? Did they know how to use it? Could they understand it? Were they exposed to culture along the way? So we had some kid input, we had some other district input, and then we spent a lot of time just going through textbooks. I'm going to try to press that button again. Maybe Tracy would be so good. Thank you. Okay, so here's our needs in a nutshell. We need them aligned. We want it to be rigorous so that any student who actually spends 4 years with us, we feel confident and they feel confident that they're going to pass the Stamp 4S test, they're going to earn their seal of biliteracy, and they will walk at graduation with the medallion that says they're bilingual in Spanish and English. That is what we want for our kids. We want it to be research-based, not just, there's a lot of companies out there that are just like, ooh, Spanish, have fun with it. We want it to be research-based. We don't want to be the ones discovering whether or not this curriculum works. We want it to still be current in scope and sequence for at least 7 years. I didn't bring the old to this group, but it's a common thing in world languages. I'm sure it's a common thing in history too. Politics change. And what was good in the textbook 14 years ago, not current, in some cases offensive, particularly when what we talk about so much of the time is culture. So we want something that's, that's still going to be current 7 years from now, and of course meets district requirements, including presentation in diversity and voice. Here's our discovery, and I'm sure that this is not uncommon from any of the other presentations that you hear. No textbook alone, no publisher alone met all of the needs. I mean, we want something big, and we didn't find anywhere what we wanted. Just like happened 14 years ago in initial adoptions, textbooks still continue to lean either very heavy on grammar or very heavy on what once upon a time was called whole language. Ooh, look at the wonderful pictures, look at these long things of reading that you can't actually read, but it would be cool if you could. We looked at SAVIS, which I know both English language arts and social studies was interested in. They had their own approach, and for SAVIS in the world languages, it would take a minimum of 3 books and ideally 4 textbooks to meet all of their needs, and that was their approach. And I just cannot imagine a high schooler with 4 textbooks for a Spanish class. You will see one of them included on it. It was the one that's called Grammar. Yep, you have it right there in your hand. That is the grammar textbook by Savas. That is one of 4 that they recommend for a single year. Not my idea of a good time either.
Perhaps we want to sell textbooks.
Yes. So here's our request and recommendation. This is not what we wanted going in. It seems like 4-year program. What we should want is to stick with the same publisher, the same type of textbook for 4 years. And we just didn't find that we liked it. Descubre, the one that we've used in the past, they only have a 3-year program, and we don't have just a 3-year program. So we weren't comfortable just sticking with them because we can't. So this is our overall proposal. You'll see at each level what we have as a main resource. Again, not what we anticipated, but we are still most comfortable with sticking with Descubre for year 1 and 2. It is a solid grammatical foundation. It is updated. The old one that we had, you know, there were all of these, ooh, technology 14 years ago. Here's a link. All of the links are dead. And so the new one has, you know, new links that are going to work hopefully for enough years. The links are to more modern, more relevant, more culturally appropriate types of information. We're super comfortable with Descubre, and you'll see we've also put down a supplementary resource for all of them. What we would like to adopt in addition to the textbook is the online resource, which is called Somos. They're online downloadables. Once you purchase it one time, you have purchased it for as long as Somos is in existence. Every time they add something new, every time they update it, you are automatically included in it for several $100s. We thought this is a win-win. We get the strong grammar for our year 1 and 2, and we have this continually renewable online resource. It's done by themes. So if you're like, oh, I would really like to do, you know, a theme on bioluminescence. It's a big thing in Spanish speaking worlds. I wonder if they have it. Sure enough, and then it will tell you all of the standards it aligns to. Do you want to download, you know, the grade level appropriate, one easier, one harder, download, print it, put them on the computer, do whatever you want with it. Spanish 3 in our AP. For the Spanish 3 AP and the Heritage class, we would like to switch publishers and go with a company that's called Wayside Publishing. So even though you see 3 different textbooks names, they're all the same publisher. They're just different Spanish names for the same type of thing. They're very heavy on more literature. If we'd have stuck with the Descubre Trace, you would get maybe a paragraph of reading and then a lot of grammar and a lot more conjugation. The Wayside, again, they're on the other side. You're going to get 3 pages of high quality literature and not nearly enough grammar. But we feel really good about teaching grammar, and we had a super strong grammar 1 and 2 program there. Thank you. Okay, supplementary resources for then 2. Heritage class, this is our new class that we're offering next year. It's Spanish for Spanish speakers. Found a textbook that we thought would work real well for them. And then we would like to supplement that with Abriendo Paso by Savas, because it's super strong in beginning to advanced level grammar. There we go. Okay. Questions for me?
Any questions? Dr. Starr?
Comment, I'll just, the presentation at the scholarship night. And so thank you and Ms. Benitez for all your work there. I was seeing the kids roll through with their getting their medals.
Love seeing them recognized.
Yeah, absolutely. Other questions? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right. More fun. I didn't.
Just my head.
Squim, good evening. I'm Michael Lippert. I'm the department chair for social studies at Squim High School. This is the Squim Social Studies adoption.
No.
No. We're not moving. Here we go. Let me give you a little background. Of all the courses that we teach in this entire school district, social studies is the one the most prone to change. In fact, it changes daily. I hate to say it, so I'll say it ahead of time. This particular course of instruction which we bought, I'm guessing, because I'm a pretty good arbiter of what's coming down the road, that by Thursday of next week, it'll be out of date. Anybody knows what I'm talking about? There's a very good possibility we will overturn Roe v. Wade next Thursday. That will be a complete and total change to what we have as a curriculum. We have to be cognizant of how fast social studies changes. 2007, we purchased our curriculum that we were using. You can imagine that from 2007 to 2022, we were seriously behind the power curve. So what we did was, I didn't do that. Okay. I didn't have nothing to do with that. So the scope of social studies teaching and learning has changed, and it has become way more technological and way more electronic in its interaction. So in pursuing the available materials that we were looking at, we slam dunked immediately and said, ELA in our school had already adopted Savas Pearson. They had come in with the electronic signature. They had everything in place. They had the software in place. They had everything that the kids knew how to access online. The materials were already in place and being used. So we immediately went to Savas Pearson and we pulled their materials in, and we started to go through it with the 4 people that are in my department. And we immediately recognized that it would be in our students' best interest to not give them a new electronic platform to have to work on in order to do their studies. If we were going to have a remote situation working, it would be nice if they were interacting with the same software background. So we went forward with Savas Pearson. We put it in place. It's very difficult. This has been an exceptionally difficult adoption in that just prior to COVID, the state of Washington, social studies, superintendent of public instruction, changed the social studies teaching methods at the high school level. Completely brand new standards. In fact, what they did was they said that the senior year of teaching will now not be a government course. It'll be a civics course for a semester and an econ course for a semester. So we had to shift gears going into a COVID restricted time frame as to how we presented material. So Savas Pearson had the necessary materials for us to really kind of benefit us in moving in that direction. Oh, well, there we go. Our course inclusions are civics, economics, US history, and world history. No, that's not all that we offer. We also offer sociology. We also offer anthropology, and then we offer 3 AP US, AP Gov, and AP World History. Because AP is a different pot of money, that particular adoption had already occurred. This adoption here is only predicated on those 4 courses. What are we looking at? Well, from the state standards, the big areas that stick out is that we have to teach these individuals to do research, critical thinking, historical relevance, questioning and hypothetical thinking, problem and solution analysis, historical perspective, and then scaffolding and historical and governmental influence over time. What does Savas offer us? Well, we had to keep at the level that we were going to be technologically and electronically connected for the rest of our lives. Savas has an incredible amount of whole class, small group, independent learning activities that can be done online. They can hook themselves up in small study groups online. It provides an ability to go into that world should we have to go into somewhat of a remote situation. Again, it serves well. It has scaffolded learning activities. Yes, every single thing in the Savas Pearson offering is for English language learners, slow readers, fast readers, and we even have every single lesson is put together to tailor to even those individuals who want to expand their knowledge on a particular subject at their own behest. They can do it. It's there for them to look at. They can interact with it and go forward. They don't have to be led by any teacher. It has a multimedia. There is tons of multimedia on the Sabbaths where they can be read to. They can slow down the reading. They can speed up the reading. They can make the enunciation louder. They can do whatever it is for them to be able to be helped with their lessons. Tailored curriculum for individual learners. As I said, these kids can drive their own train when it comes to learning. Again, we're really keeping this in the world of how do we satisfy the learning necessities of a population that may very well have to go remote. Self-reflection and the growth goals are there. And then we have a cultural, ethnic, and a race neutrality focus. It didn't shine as well through for the 6th to 8th graders, but in this particular curriculum, in fact, if you look to the front cover of our book, the front cover of our book is a plaid shirt with a campaign button. We have no black, we have no white, we have no Hispanic. It is just, that's what it is. When you open up the material, you will find entries in there that are put in there for learning that come from numerous other voices. There is a Black voice, there's a Hispanic voice, there's an Indigenous people's voice, or white voice. I mean, and you get a lot of different perspectives on the same common theme, which opens up the students to opinions that may not be the one they share. And we have to open up their lens. We got to expand these kids' lens, because if we don't, we're not preparing them for what comes as a future. Technological interface. I'm going to take this is not going to be pretty, but we got to talk about it. All students are a one-to-one computer usage. So they're issued to them beginning at the year and they'll be returned at the end. Pushback from students using computers was evident. After 2.5 years of being in a COVID restricted mindset, these kids looked to us as teachers and said, look, just talk to me. Just speak. Can you please shut down the amount of computer you're hammering into me, and just can we have discussions? Can we have small lectures? Can we talk? Can we discuss? So there was a real paradigm shift for us. New curriculum. It was, so we had some challenges. Forgotten computers by students was problematic. Sometimes they just didn't remember to bring them. So we had to have some in the room, and sometimes we didn't have enough, and we had to go to other rooms and borrow computers. The loading of information is somewhat difficult at times and slow to availability. When we go one-on-one as a school district, and you start putting 1,000 computers on the net at one time, you got to know that from a functionality standpoint, that's going to start to be difficult. Okay, finding a hybridized approach to marrying up in-person instruction and remote instruction has always proved to be a challenge. And since it was our first year with this curriculum, executing the nuances of the material and the expansive amount of the technology available by Sabbath proves to be a learning curve that's rather steep, but not undoable, because I have the 4 best professionals on the planet in my department. Okay, curriculum adoption conclusion. The curriculum has done an extensive job of removing cultural, ethnic, and sociological bias from the presentation of their facts. And that's what we want to do. We want to get that stuff out of the way, and we want to let the facts represent themselves. The technology interface portion of this textbook and the ancillary materials are enormous and in-depth. We can do with this curriculum anything we want to do. We can guide this instruction in any manner we want to guide it. We can take it to new heights. The technology in the district must be a forefront conversation as time goes forward. Internet and connectivity of computers must be assured. Remember, we live in SWIM. Connectivity in this place is not guaranteed. So when these kids take these computers and they go home and we are on internet, we can't guarantee that they're going to have an ability to actually do their work. That has to be a forefront. Deficiencies of access must still be a conversation of importance. As the students, as not all students enjoy the same level of service within our community. I can still recall the days when we were in COVID lockdown that we had kids taking computers to the parking lot at JCPenney and parking next to a bus that was a Wi-Fi hotspot so they could access materials. We have to recognize the reality of our situation. We are moving into the 21st century, but we may not necessarily be 21st century connected with our actual electronic signature. So with that, our recommendation here very easily is that we just continue to teach this material, we adopt it, and we move forward into the 21st century with a system that works very well for us. Any questions for me?
Director Jeffries, you want to go first?
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of things, but you mentioned a couple of things. Curriculum adoption, like 2007, the last time you did it.
Yep.
Who is that for? Because you mentioned that AP and some other courses had updated curriculum,
Right, that was for only our regular classes.
just the core classes.
Core
that you
classes,
mentioned there.
yep.
And then, so how often should it be adopted? Or I guess the other question is, what happened?
What happened?
2007 to 2022? That's a big gap.
Geez, you don't want to get me started.
Okay.
Please don't, because I will throw people under the bus and you don't want that,
Let
okay?
me ask you the other way. When will this come back up for adoption?
Mr. Jeffries, you might want to talk to her, you might want to talk to the replacement, you might. Can I give you a small snippet? In the old days, I've been here 22 years, we had a curriculum adoption schedule that was mandated on a 6-year rota. We don't have a 6-year rota. That's a problem.
Is that something we can do?
Well, sir, you sit on the board, you can do anything you want. That's
well
not,
then.
that's not my.
And then you mentioned, when did the civics economy, economics,
The state mandate was 2019.
okay, so the criticism you hear all the time from everybody, we don't teach civics and we don't teach economics anymore.
Well, guess what? They're lying.
They don't know.
They don't know.
Okay,
Because I'm teaching it right now. I'm teaching every day.
and do all students take those courses?
Every single student in my department gets civics and econ every year.
So that's a good answer when we get that criticism, I guess.
That's exactly
Very
right.
good.
Come and talk to Mr. Lippert. I'll tell you. I'll show you my materials.
Very good.
Any other questions?
I just had a question about, if I understand this right, when you're talking about the technological side,
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
accessing things via the computer documents, is that, it sounds to me like what you're saying is that that really isn't necessary to the teaching of social studies, but certainly because we live in an era of COVID and that students have to have that access. Because I'm wondering what that is. Is
If-
that like primary sources that they're looking at or?
Oh, no, I mean,
Video
no.
clips?
Oh, no, no. Well, it could be.
Yeah.
But more than that, I mean, we publish all of our assignments on Canvas. And Canvas is an internet-based learning management system.
Yeah, I know.
They need to have connectivity to pull the assignment up. They got to have connectivity to submit it. They have to have connectivity to be graded. If we have dead spots and we have places where kids can't do it, and we got people living in this district who don't even own a computer, don't even have a Wi-Fi, this isn't the richest community on the planet. So, we have definite infrastructural issues that have to be addressed. They get no choices.
But do you think that actually the social studies and take COVID and all of that out of it could be taught without all of the technology? I can see why it's necessary in math.
Of course it could.
Yeah.
Of course.
We all get it,
If
right?
if I had my students back in my room, I can teach them anything.
Because I just was thinking about the students who said to you, they want more discussion.
They do.
Want more,
That's what they want.
yeah.
They do not want to be stymied. They want Mr. Lippert, just talk.
So I have a question
Sure.
from Director Johnston.
Yep.
I Thank you. I really appreciate your just your passion and the enthusiasm that you're bringing to this. And I was struck by the same thing that Director Halverson was, which is just the comment that the kids just want you to talk to them. And, you know, I'm somebody who was very influenced by human teachers when I was a student. And I just want to say I can imagine how challenging it is to be in an environment where you never know when you're going to have to go off of an in-person learning environment and into a virtual environment. But I just appreciate so much every human interaction that a student has with a teacher. And it just, I mean, to me, at the end of the day, that's where the magic happens in school. And so thank you for raising that issue. And I just think a lot of times people think kids, you know, you hear all the time, oh, kids are just always on their phones. Kids are just always on their computers. Kids aren't paying attention. And to me, to hear that what students are saying is, I just want to talk to my teacher. You know, I just want you to interact with me. I really appreciate you saying that. I really can appreciate how challenging it is to try to teach and form those relationships in this environment. But I would just encourage anything you can do to keep that one-on-one or that, you know, that human discussion with them, because kids do have as you were saying, the world is changing so much. And there's so much challenging information that these kids are having to process every day. And to have a human in a classroom with them who's helping them sort through that and helping them process all the things that are coming at them is just an incredible gift to them. And so thank you. And I found your presentation really interesting, and that point in particular.
Thank you very much. Any other questions?
Looks like Director Jeffries, one more.
Just real quick, it sounds like the Savas Pearson program will allow you, even though you have a hard copy textbook that's out of date on Thursday, maybe, but that the Savas will allow you to continually update over the next 6 years.
Oh, yeah.
Until we can get
Yeah, we have so much pumped in at the base level from Savas into the electronic signature. I honestly can tell you that it's almost undoable. There's so much available. You can pick and choose until your heart's content. And it is very relevant. It's very timely. It represents the voices across America. You know, we are, after all, a panorama. Nobody looks the same. We wake up in the morning, you know, we're a patchwork quilt that's wonderfully put together. And you know what? We got to represent that. I don't care if you're a white person, I don't care if you're a black person, I don't care what kind of teacher you are. Represent the patchwork of America and make them feel how important that is. By the way, you know, this is a star right here. You know that, right? You know why she's a star? Because she has my department's cord this year as the #1 social studies student in school. Didn't know that was coming. Any other questions you might ask? I'd be more than happy to answer.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much for your time.
All right, so
Well,
Are we muted up here? I have 6. 6 o'clock.
What's the name of it?
Okay, I have 6 o'clock. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. And start with the Pledge of Allegiance. We have a flag right in the back of the room there. If you don't please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Just want to review our meeting guidelines, safety protocol. Purpose of this meeting is for the board to conduct board business. Meeting is open to public and is recorded. You can listen to all past board meetings by visiting board docs through the district website. This meeting is being presented via Zoom as well. It's not appropriate for audience members to interrupt board business or ask questions during the board. There is a portion of the meeting that's reserved for public comments. Board members will not engage in discussion or debate with members of the public. The superintendent may provide information if appropriate. The board chair acknowledges input received and may, if needed, ask the superintendent to look into the matter and report back to the board. If you have any concerns about individual district employees or specific complaints that require an administrative response, please contact the office of superintendent directly. And for in-person public comments, we do have a sign-up sheet that's located at the sign-in table.
That was very nice.
Thanks.
That's what I get for trying to turn off my speaker.
There you go.
Sign-up sheet located at the sign-in table. So you'll need to sign in before making comments. You'll need to state your name and address. You'd have 3 minutes to speak. Agenda items are listed in the agenda, which should be posted up front. We will have, and that brings us to 2.04, our vision and mission statement. Director Halverson, would you like to read our vision and mission statement?
Sure. Vision, our community inspires and prepares each student to thrive. Our mission, in connection with our community, the Sequim School District empowers staff to inspire hope and provide flexible, innovative learning opportunities in a safe and respectful environment so each student thrives.
Thank you. And Director Jeffries, would you like to read our land acknowledgement?
Sure. The Sequim School District administrative and school buildings sit on the ancestral land of the Sklallam people. While Sklallam traditionally come from one nation, history has led to the formation of 3 sovereign Sklallam tribal governments. Lower Elwha Sklallam tribe, which is located in Port Angeles. Jamestown Sklallam tribe, located in Sequim, Washington. Port Gamble Sklallam tribe, located in Kingston, Washington. The district's primary partnership is with Jamestown Sklallam tribe. Today, the tribe and district share the partnership that includes official consultation on program funding changes that may directly affect American Indian and Alaska Native students, as well as holistic service planning for students to remain successful in their educational journeys.
Thank you very much. And that brings us to 3.01. We have a special presentation. or, well, we actually have two. I believe it's, is it Marcy that's going to be? Marcy? Hi.
Hi.
And I believe you have a presentation, and then we have some business to discuss later on in the meeting that will be relevant to your special presentation, but we wanted to give you about 5 minutes or so to,
Where would be an appropriate place?
right there.
Where
is
you are, and there's a
perfect.
little table there if it's useful to you.
Perfect, thank you. All right, greetings. Thank you for having me here today. Since the initial construction of the Swim School District track in 1996, their running surfaces have dilapidated into an abysmal state of disrepair. If you've not been out to the track lately, I invite you to take a virtual stroll and see it for yourself. You got the slideshow? Thank you. Slide. As you can see, the surfaces have separated from the pavement. There are numerous holes in the surface large enough that they cross entire lanes. Throughout the circumference of the track, slide, there are cracks along both the inside and outside edges. Some of these cracks extend across multiple lanes. There are even places where the grass has grown through these cracks. Slide, please. The quality of the school track is a visible embarrassment, and it requires immediate attention. Furthermore, the present state of the track has led to several unfavorable conditions in the form of worsening tripping hazards, injuries, and an increased likelihood of potential litigation. As a medical professional with experience in clinical practice, I've seen such injuries manifest as sprains, shin splints, plantar fasciitis, stress fractures, and joint degradation. Lifelong ailments can and do arise from running on poorly maintained surfaces. At this point, injuries occurring is not a matter of if, but when. Even though the track is scheduled for Tier 4 levy funding, this will likely only cover basic repairs and does not come soon enough. Temporary Band-Aid solutions, which have already been implemented, are beginning to show signs of wear and tear. Additionally, the track does not meet National Federation of State High School Association safety requirements for hosting any home competitions. Because of this, our state qualifying running teams are forced to commute about an hour of traveling time to Port Angeles to practice. SCWIM does not have priority usage on the PA track. They must wait there until there is availability. On average, practice at the PA track begins at 6:45 p.m. and ends at 7:45 p.m. The typical return time back to SCWIM is approximately 8:15. These are long, grueling evenings for students and parents alike, and it equates to loss of valuable study, family, and personal time. Slide, please. Discussions with parents, students, and other community collaborators indicate that there is a growing interest in making steps towards overhauling the sports complex in which the track lies. That is why today, along with many other community stakeholders, I am formally requesting a committee comprised of at least 1 to 2 school board members to address the practical steps towards mediating these known issues. With a small committee, tangible action items such as fundraising, grant writing, surveying, planning, community outreach, and proposal development can begin to take place in real time, not 4 years from now. Please consider, physical education is a mandatory class at some point for every SCWIM student as part of the standardized curriculum. Last year, 487 SCWIM high school and 550 SCWIM middle school students were enrolled in PE. Conservative reports from students suggest that all PE classes use the track at minimum once a week, if not daily. Once school resumed post-quarantine, students were out on the track nearly every single day. The track is also utilized by town residents, including our state-winning cross-country team and track teams. Large projects like overhauling the track may seem like a daunting task at first glance.
However, every journey begins with a single step. Collaborative efforts of a small committee will ensure effective, ongoing communication and project management can happen. Together, we can begin to invest in safe environments that support displays of admirable qualities, hard work, dedication, perseverance, mutual respect, inclusivity, and so on. Traits that we all wish to see in our children. Thank you for your time and consideration. Let's do this. Let's build this track together. Thank you.
So we do have this as a discussion item later regarding that, but just wanted, is there any specific questions that any of the board has for Marcy anyway? Be answered? Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And that brings us to 3.02. And we have, this is sort of a sad, kind of happy sad, we knew it was gonna happen, so.
Eventually, they
Yes.
all fly the nest.
Yes,
Yeah.
so, want to, this is, of course, we have, our thing about it when we have a student board representative on the board is they're with us for a very short period of time, but, this is where we want to take some time to appreciate, our student board. I mean, she's graduating, so what are we gonna do? Did you want to say anything first, or?
Well, sure.
Okay.
I haven't gotten to know you for very long, but you are truly going places, young woman. And we are so incredibly proud of you and grateful to you for your service to the board and to the district, to your fellow students, to this community. You are amazing, and your shining star right now is shooting up, and we'll be watching you because we will see more of you. I believe you told me that you're interested in political science. Is that correct?
Yeah.
What a wonderful choice for you. We wish you the best, and we know that SQUIM did you well, and you did well by us, and we thank you and wish you the best.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that I mentioned how much I appreciated your voice. You weren't shy to share it. You were passionate, but we knew it was your true voice coming out. And that is the purpose of having your voice as a part of this board, is to be that voice for the students, because the board needs to hear that. So I thank you, and always great inquisitive questions that needed to be asked. So, yeah.
So Leslie, you were here for all of COVID. And, you overcame through all those challenges and always provided some input for our work and that student voice. And I also appreciate the work you did at the state level. And because I know you testified and offered some other statewide. So thank you. And yes, I know we'll see you as ambassador, at least some United Nations.
Yeah, head of the United Nations.
Yeah.
Probably.
Something.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Thank you.
And I would just like to say that I haven't known you very long at all, but we've had at least one really good lengthy conversation about the future, about next year with the student reps and SQUIM High School. And I appreciated you sharing your ideas with me, that even as you're looking towards Whitworth and your new experience, that you had the time and the care to think about what you're leaving behind and how to make it better. And so I really do appreciate that. Thank you.
Don, I want to thank you for, I remember we interviewed you online.
Yeah.
I don't even think you had video.
No.
And you were so impressive by what you had to tell. I think Eric, Director Pickens, and I were the committee, and the board backed us up, and we done good. You're an amazing young lady, and I agree with everything that the rest of the board said. Looking forward to hearing your story as you go forward.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Director Johnston, anything to share?
Yes, I just want to echo what everybody else has said. It was always the highlight of the meeting for me to, when it was time for the student reports, and especially when Lisa would go off script a little bit, and we'd get to hear about her input on a particular issue of interest to the high school students. So I think she's got as you said, a great future ahead, and I hope she will come back from time to time and update us on what she's doing, and I just wish her all the best.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you for your service, and it's so much appreciated. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I say something?
Absolutely.
It's all yours.
I was just gonna say that this was a challenge for me at first, because coming from a place where English was my second language and still is my second language, this was definitely a challenge that I felt grew me beyond my standards and what I had expected. So I want to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to grow in myself and just in my beliefs, and just hoping for the best for Swim High School. So thank you.
So let's hear it for Elise.
yeah. All right. And with that, that brings us to 4.01 on our agenda. Approval of the May 9th minutes. I believe we're going to be voting online, so I do hope that everyone is logged into Board Docs. Yeah. We'll give it a try, but I will be happy to take a motion.
Chair, motion that we approve the May 9th regular board meeting minutes.
Do you have a second?
I second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, go ahead and approve on your device when indicated.
It's where you cue the Jeopardy music. Watch.
All right, and that motion has passed. That brings us to 4.02, which is an approval of the May 19th special meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
I move that we accept the May 19th special meeting minutes.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, please vote when indicated. All right, that motion is approved. And that brings us to our agenda. Do we have any changes to the agenda? All right, happy to take a motion for approval of the agenda.
Mr. Chair, make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Okay, do we have a second?
I second.
All right, any discussion? All right, please vote when indicated. The agenda is approved. Brings us to our consent agenda. Motion on the consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Just want to make note of the donations we got from the city of Sequim, the monetary to help with our outreach program that Mayor Packer does. And hopefully one of us is speak at the next city council meeting and thank them for their, those were pretty nice monetary amounts.
Good. Thank you. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, please, please vote when indicated. When prompted. When you get the pop-up. All right, consent agenda is approved. And that's going to bring us to 7.01, which is our public comments. Just kind of go over our public comment again. Each individual does have 3 minutes. A group of individuals may combine their time up to a 10-minute maximum with one spokesperson for the group. Individuals who wish to speak or combine their time, you need to sign up for on the public comment clipboard. We'll have both in-person public comment as well as live virtual public comment. For in-person comment, that's using the clipboard. For live virtual public comment, you will need to raise your hand using the Zoom application. Yeah, then you'll be unmuted when it's your turn to speak. Do want to remind folks, it is not appropriate for complaints or charges about employees to be mentioned during public comment. These issues are to be addressed to the superintendent in writing. The board superintendent or district personnel typically do not engage in direct conversation or give feedback during the meeting. Board action and discussion is limited to the published agenda topics. So we'd ask you to please state your name and address and affiliation when speaking. We'll start with our in-person public comment. And I have, is it Greg Madsen?
Yes, it is.
Okay, Greg, you can step up here if you're able to do so, or you might be able to work back. Will it work from back there? Yeah, I think it'll work from back there.
I've never had any trouble being heard.
Okay. All right, sir.
My name is Greg Madsen. I live in Blinn. Board members might remember the monolith from the movie 2001: Space Odyssey. Stanley Kubrick used it as a metaphor that tested the intellectual progress of the human race. Briefly, when discovered, those beings who placed it knew that humans were ready for the next evolutionary step. In an ironic twist to this metaphor, a monolithic condition within the Sequim Middle School has been screaming to be discovered and acted upon for more than 24 years. After passing of a bricks and mortar bond issue in 1998, the school was designed and built excluding school student lockers. I've been told this was done to remove hiding spots for drugs, alcohol, and undefined contraband. That decision forces students to carry large backpacks that are their burdens all day, everywhere. Like beautiful dung beetles, they are condemned to bear the necessities of their education on their backs. The rule of thumb on backpack weight is that the load should not exceed 10% of the bearer's weight. Exceed that limit and you're risking lifelong orthopedic damage, including stress fractures in the back, inflammation of growth cartilage, back and neck strain, and nerve damage in the neck and shoulders. Since 1998, multiple school board directors, superintendents, principals, teachers, coaches, physicians, chiropractors, and massage therapists, and let's not forget parents, have chosen to ignore this issue. What does it take to comprehend that kids walking bent forward, shoulders rounded, and heads raised is evidence of a health hazard? The Volga Boatman, if you're familiar with the song, will provide an appropriate musical accompaniment to the kids leaving Sequim Middle School at the end of the school day. Yet, the problem has never seen an offered solution within
any proposed bond since 1998. That's 24 years. Squim Middle School enrolls approximately 660 kids. Let's say that one locker would cost $1,000 to buy and install. Probably an overestimate, but let's be generous. Compared to the bottom lines in previous bond issues, including the current approved bond, $660,000 is chump change for an improvement that would directly affect kids' current health as well as their future well-being. There are those in Squim who dispute the validity of evolution. I disagree. Or I must admit there's evidence for the lack of perceptive evolution for nearly a quarter of a century when examining decisions of the Squim School District. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. All right, and Mr. Pearsall.
Sure.
Have you next? I do have that you are, Ms. Pearsall is going to be presenting your time.
Thank you.
Okay.
My name is Matt Pearsall. Today I came to bring to light something else going on at the middle school. I want to ask, what happens when you lose your cool? As a cop, I lose. As an administrator, you lose. Yet every day, there's an administrator that walks around screaming, getting in children's faces, making up her own rules. And I don't understand why it goes on. This last week was a prime example of making up your own rules. It was a dance, supposed to be a happy time for the kids to come and play and dance and enjoy each other. Some of them may not see each other after 8th grade. We have I don't know the exact number, but we have plenty of kids that are on homeschool as well. Those homeschool kids, whether it's complete homeschool or take a couple of classes at school, they're still entitled to play sports, be involved in clubs, and attend dances. I know that. For the fact that this went on, that certain students weren't allowed to go because they were not part of brick and mortar school is ridiculous. The fact that the decision had to be pushed all the way to Ms. Zook is ridiculous. Your administrators at the middle school make well over $200,000 together, and they couldn't figure out that, hey, ooh, we made the wrong decision, and just write it. Instead, it got pushed all the way up to the superintendent to make this decision, and it left a lot of bad blood. Stuff that, I mean, you know, I miss you guys and all, but this is what I wanted to come talk about. You know, I didn't think we had to talk about. And if I know that this is one of the rules, I don't understand why the administrators don't know. The other thing is, when it comes to yelling and screaming and getting in kids' faces, did it work when you're in school? I mean, I can't remember an administrator or a teacher that had done that to me.
Mr. Pearsall, I want you, if you can keep your comments specific to the issue and not the individuals if they're employees.
Well, the issue, let's just talk about yelling at people in general. If I got right up in your face, besides you guys calling the police probably, it doesn't feel good. It's not comfortable to have someone yelling at you, getting right up in your face. It sucks. It's disrespectful. This is my space right here. I don't think our kids should have to see that confrontation is handled that way. There are better ways to handle things. I'm hoping we can figure something out at the middle school level. I'm hoping there's a better way to handle this, maybe get some training going. But yelling and getting it in kids' faces, they're not going to respect you for that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next, just to double check, Ms. Pearsall, is that, unless you wanted to come up separate? Okay. Yeah. We have Emily Manley.
Hi. I actually don't know. I get a little bit of stage fright, but I'm Emily Manley, and I guess I mostly have questions about why the situation with my daughter being continually sexually harassed at these schools or at the school. We were repeatedly told that there was nothing we can do, and it just continued to escalate and escalate and escalate. And it wasn't until I went to social media and just simply pleaded with people for help that I got a response and I learned about forms, about HIV forms, and maybe as parents, I don't know if every parent knows that you need to fill out an HIV form for every single incident, but I mean, I have a ninth grader, so my son's been in school for how many years is that? 10 years now, and I never knew about this form, and I guess what I'm worried about is the lack of communication, the lack of seriousness applied to the situation with my daughter. And yes, now something I feel like is being done, and I appreciate that. I don't know what's being done because again, nobody has contacted me. And then I receive an email today from one of the HR administrators saying, this has been resolved and do you accept? And I'm thinking, what do you mean this has been resolved? Nobody's contacted me. Nobody's sat down and said, hey, I'm sorry this happened to your daughter. And this boy has said these crude, nasty things and done things to my daughter. But it's just like, well, it seems like it's maybe being handled. She doesn't see him all the time, but how come there's this lack of communication? So I guess I just want to know why that happens and how it can be better. I don't think that, I want to choose my words wisely because I'm not trying to attack certain people. But I don't think it was handled appropriately. And I want to see the reports that say every time my daughter was sexually harassed, that those reports were turned in and I had more concern, way more concern from the teachers that saw this happening to my daughter going, this is crazy. I don't know why this is happening and why it's allowed to continue to happen, but I am so sorry. And like, when I saw that from the teachers, but not from the administrators, that's a little bit wild to me, that these are the people in power that are leading our children, our next generation. I have also had the same experience at the middle school with that administrator. And I feel for the person because I know that all of you have an immense amount of weight on your shoulders and that your hands are tied in several different ways. But I do think it can be better, especially in serious situations. With that particular person, I have personally had to say, like, take it down a notch, like, you need to calm down. We're just talking right now.
And if you don't mind keeping your comments just limited, not to the
Not to
individual
a
person.
specific
'cause we
person.
can't-
Okay, well, I guess, do we just come up here and say, I complain? I complain about this and I want some
Yeah.
answers. But
Well, we just, if it's
I don't know what to- I've
regarding
never
a
done this.
specific employee, we just want to make sure it's directed to the office of superintendent. But if it's about a specific employee, that's all. So.
I
I don't
turn it
recall
up.
her mentioning a specific
I've never said
employee.
anything. I just said administrator, is that okay?
It's fine.
Okay.
You have about.
You're done.
Oh, I'm done.
Okay.
You're done. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Aubrey Thomas. Okay.
Everybody, I'm Audrey Thomas. I'm here kind of backing up Emily. Y'all received emails from me as well. Kind of the same situation of questioning how the sexual harassment type situations have been ongoing in our elementary schools and have not been addressed. I'm really nervous, sorry, I don't like public speaking. My daughter would go on the playground, and if she gets hit or a ball tossed at her or something happens physically, I get a phone call immediately. Yet months can go by of her being sexually harassed in class and verbally assaulted on a daily basis, and I've never heard from anybody. Not a phone call. She's been to the principal's office time and time and time again. I'm like, did you talk to the principal? Did you talk to your teacher? Yes, I talked to the teacher. Did you talk to the principal? Yes, I talked to the principal. In my opinion, as a parent, things are going to be handled then. The situation's going to be under control. Something's going to happen, but nothing has happened. And it's been a year now of nonstop. So at what point do we create some sort of, I feel like there should be a policy in place, there has to be, for sexual harassment. Is it not being applied at the elementary level? Because it should be, because the things being said to these children is sexual harassment. It is verbal assault, and it needs to be brought to that level and be brought to parents' attention that this is happening. And I understand how children can be physically assaulted and will be, oh, hey, this is happening to your kid right now. Do you want to come pick them up? Do you want to file charges? Do you want this to happen? Yet they can have their emotional well-being and their mental processes, their mental growth affected on a daily basis by these things and have it never brought up at all. So, these are our questions in this. We're not, trying to call out anybody specifically, but, why does it take us getting loud and getting really, really angry about it and posting it on the internet for anything to have happened this year? And it's escalated over a very long period of time. And why does it take parents hopping up and down and being mad for anything to happen? That's my question. I feel like sexual harassment in the elementary schools should be stamped out immediately and shouldn't be pushed to the side and not taken seriously. Oh, it's just kids, they're just saying stuff. I thought we're over that. We're over sticks and stones will break my bones, right? That whole saying, that's done, that's over with. We've learned from that. Okay, words do hurt. Words cause damage to these kids, but it's starting at a very young age. And 10-year-olds being told these things is not acceptable.
That ends our public comment for in-person. Do we have any virtual attendees wishing to make public comment? If you do, please do so by using the raise hand feature, which should be at the bottom of the Zoom platform. All right, seeing none, we'll close down that portion of the meeting and maybe just perhaps Superintendent Zook, if there's any loose ends to tie up regarding communication back to
Absolutely.
folks, we could look into that. Okay. And we're going to move on to our student board representative presentations. So do want to mention, and I forgot to mention it before, unfortunately, Caleb's not able to be with us, but we did get the something dropped off, a big thank you form from the Swim Education Foundation for some books. So we will make sure that we get that presented to him. And sorry, we couldn't give it to him right here in person, but we'll certainly make sure that he receives that. So looks like a lot of kids signed it from third grade. So
A lot of messages and hearts on there, I see.
yeah. So
That's for Caleb.
Yes.
okay. All right. The floor is yours once again.
It feels so weird to just report for the last time when this is what I usually do. So I'm going to start with Swim High School. They would like to say that these last 2 weeks of the 2021 and 2022 school year will be normal weeks. The schedule is back just like it was before COVID, meaning no homeroom and no block days. Even though last week was rainy and cloudy, the weather did not stop the productive execution of Campus Day that took place in June 3rd. There was a coffee stand that was always busy. There were games that were frequented from the start of the event. And of course, the yearbook sale was also a success. All 4 years of high school are coming to an end for the seniors this Friday, June 10th at 6 p.m. The graduation ceremony will be held at Swim High School Stadium. Another grand ceremony was the scholarship awards ceremony that took place in SHS Auditorium at June 1st. For anyone who didn't attend it this year, the total amount of scholarships collected for the senior class was almost $4 million, which was not seen in previous years. You can say that the ceremony was a big achievement for Swim High School. And Swim Middle School would like to say that last week of school for the middle schoolers is the week of June 13th to June 17th. On June 7th, the choir is going to hold a concert in SHS Auditorium at 7 p.m. By June 10th, all the books should be turned in at the library together with the laptops given throughout the year. And on June 16th and 8th, the 8th graders and their families are invited to attend the Moving On drive-through, finalizing the end of their middle school journey. Squib Middle School is collecting students clothes size 6T to adult 3XL over the summer. This cause will provide free clothes for all the people who need them. For more information or questions, Marin Packer is the person you can reach out to at mpacker@swimschools.org. That's all I have for today. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. That brings us to 9.01, regular board communication. Director Johnston, do you want to start us off on board communication?
Sure. I don't have a lot to add. I know there's been a lot on the agenda, and I want to thank the parents who came and offered their public comment tonight. I know we're not really responding, but I do want people to know that we are hearing what you're saying, and we do listen, and we do appreciate your coming and bringing your concerns to the board. And so thank you for that. Apart from that, I just really want to give my best wishes to all the seniors who are about to move on. It's a very exciting time for all of you, and you have great things ahead in whichever direction you're going, to college or to work or to the military or to whatever. I know there are lots of different paths that students take after they leave high school, and we wish you all the best. And I think that's about it for what I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Jeffries?
Yeah, I don't have too much to add to, because we do have a lot on the agenda, important stuff coming up that I want to make sure we get to. Yeah, congratulations to the seniors and that scholarship, the $4 million. That's really, really impressive for a town the size of Swim. Shows a lot of hope and backing that the kids at Swim are getting as they move on from Swim High School. That's just pretty amazing. Yeah, the clothes closet that you mentioned from Miriam Packers. I often go to the second floor of the administration building over here just to check in on her amazing collection of free clothes that she has for kids. She's really quite a supply up there. It's just really amazing. Some of the, well, I guess I would say this is the biggest crowd we've had, not just before COVID. We've very seldom had a crowd this large, even before COVID started. So even though there were there are several concerns on the table that might have brought you here tonight, I really appreciate you being here. It's really, really important that we hear from parents in the community. And this is one forum where you can express your concerns. And so I really appreciate you for being here. And as Director Johnson mentioned, you are listened to and you are heard. Sometimes it's kind of frustrating because we can't speak out right away and tell you this or that, or give you the details behind the scenes. You just can't do that. But just know that we are hearing you, and we do take what you have to say seriously. And then yesterday, I attended the Dungeness River Nature Center ribbon cutting. And very amazing facility. I'm really excited and looking forward to when they open up officially July 7th. And I encourage all of you to get over there, because they do provide educational programs for kids and their parents to learn about nature. And it's just a really amazing facility. And we were talking about facilities, and we're going to talk about facilities. There are probably people we need to tap into to find out, how did you build a world-class facility? How did that happen? And learn from what they did. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Greg Hobson?
I want to just agree with Larry about the importance of the River Center and the educational opportunities it provides. I attended the scholarship night, and this was my first time, and it was really amazing to me and so inspirational to see these graduating seniors and their hustle in terms of getting scholarship money and the awards that were given out. It was really meaningful. It was a meaningful night, very much a very strong community, and just that honoring of excellence is just so important for students to see that at the end of their high school career. So it was really quite moving for me. On the other end of it, with the little kids, I went to the OPA drama performances, and that was really delightful. And I had a chance to talk to some parents there. And what really struck me is that SCRIM really tries to serve the needs of a variety of students in different kinds of educational settings. And the perspective I got, at least from the parents I spoke to, was that OPA was really a terrific fit for their child. And they were so appreciative that they could sort of tailor make this sort of educational experience that works for the way their child learns. And I hope that that is a philosophy that's throughout our schools, that we meet children where they are and we make sure that we address their needs. The performances were delightful, and it was just so great to see again community folks in the audience just involving themselves in the students' performance and being so supportive. Finally, I just want to say something about something we'll be talking about a little bit later, because it's something important to me, is student voice. It was great to see and very important to see parent voice tonight. And I do appreciate that as part of our job here, is to listen to the community, listen to parents, and also listen to students and what their needs are. And so one of the things that we're certainly working on as a board is how to amplify student voice on the board. We'll be talking about that more later. I think there's a statewide interest on school boards to see that students have a role to play, and that they have a lot to say, and they have concerns with the issues that we confront every day. And so that is something that I think is very important as we bring this year to close and start a new year. Just that getting that student voice heard and understood. So,
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Les, thank you again, and all the best on your next journey. It was good seeing you with those, getting those awards, and so all the best. Families, parents out there, thank you for being here. Yes, we do take this voice, your voice, very serious, but we do have to, there's those policies that we all have to follow and stay in line with. And when we're meeting, this is our first opportunity of actually meeting, and we have to do this business in public in front of you. Because if Maren and I were to meet, and then I turn around and go meet with Eric, that constitutes a meeting, and that we have to be here and do our work in front of you. So that's what we're doing here tonight, and there's a lot of other items we'll be talking through. Some of the things on budget, we have to think about athletic facilities and also roofs on buildings and heating and cooling systems and career tech education and new curriculum. We're going to approve some curriculum. We just earlier had a workshop with several curriculums. Some of it goes back to 2007 and hasn't been updated. And so all of those have a cost. And so we'll be looking at all these issues, really leaning into them. And but thank you, parents, families, to be here again. I also was at the River Center. I think several of us were there. Especially the words of Annette Hansen, who started out here actually as, I think she had, did she have your job at one time, Tracy, way back, or Megan's job, yeah. And I think she had this cart, and her husband taught science here in 40 years ago, 45. But she had this card that was the thing that, and I asked her what were those words again, and she talked about that the friendship of those we serve is the foundation of our process. So what I heard so much yesterday was the partnership and collaboration between, we had the tribe, we had the Audubon Society, we had the community, we had the taxpayers, we had everybody said this is a good thing to do. We need to do this, and so that's what it's going to take for other work, especially with facilities. Legislative stuff. We have a General Assembly coming up 30th September for 1 October. I'll provide a lot more details on the follow-on meeting and what all that means for us. And then the annual conference is 17th through 19th November. We all should have got a survey today about breakout sessions who would be interested in attending. And encourage board members to look at that. And then we can have follow-on more in-depth discussions later on. Looking forward of approving these curriculum and then our discussion about our athletic facilities, student voice. And
Great, thank you. I'll follow up just by saying, like my other colleagues said, I definitely appreciate the public comment that was made tonight, and I want to just assure whenever there's public comment, but particularly public comment that relates to students. Well, I shouldn't discount other public comments, so I'm sorry, but obviously I'm a teacher, primary teacher at that, so when it comes to students that anyway, just want to make sure folks know that that we are listening for sure. And also at the River Center, I appreciated that opening. I'm hopeful that we can continue to be partners with them. I see some great learning opportunities, hopefully maybe some field trips in the future. But remember, back when schools used to do a lot of field trips. And, also have graduation coming up, which looking forward to, just not only just from on the board, just because I of course have a graduate, but no, I'm excited to see that our graduates making it through. That's a huge achievement for them, particularly where they, if you look at their high school experience, it was a little different than a typical high schooler's experience for sure. So I think that speaks to where they're at. I also want to point out that, I believe that this is our last regular board meeting before school is out for all students. And I want to just point out all the students, not just the seniors, but all the students getting through the school year was, there's some that had really been out of practice with the student. And so just I think it's probably been a tough year at all levels for all students. And with that, I'd be remiss not to point out that the staff right now, I'm sure, are winding down their year. What's been, I can only imagine, an incredibly exhausting year for staff. But they come in every day and they just give it their all for the students. And I want to make sure that the staff knows that that's acknowledged by the board. So Superintendent Zook, if you don't mind, just sharing that on behalf of the board as the year wraps up. We appreciate everything that they've done, and during an incredibly tough year. So, and that is all for me. So, and that brings us to. We have reports to the board. We have 2 reports to the board. We're going to start with our annual health services report. I believe we have Sonia here. Hello.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hi, everybody. Hi, school board. I'm up there.
Yes.
Sorry for my back. I can see Tracy give me the "you're almost out of time" nod. So true to my Squimite roots, I'm a little informal. So if you have questions, I hope you'll just ask me, because for a nurse, communication happens with a conversation. So I hope tonight to just give you some highlights of the year. It has been a busy year for health services, and I'd like to share that with you. But first of all, what we have is the pictures of all of our staff up there. But with me tonight is Artis Mangonel, and this counts as Artis's 30th year with the Swim School District. Part of health services. Thank you. Your credit to the district, and I would be lost without her. This is my 10th year, And then we have Kyla is our newest hire at Helen Haller, and she's the second full-time health services staff we have there. Number one at Haller is Sherry Hendrickson, who's done a massive amount of training with Kyla this year. Can't thank her enough. Jane over here giving the thumbs up at Grey Wolf. We have Artis and Cassie. Cassie's our middle school health clerk. She moved from the position at Haller to the middle school, and Celine there in the crazy glasses is high school health services. So I, every year, have to say, I cannot thank this district enough for the support for health services. It is unprecedented on the West Coast. Now on the East Coast, they get a nurse in every school. But the only reason we function as well as we do is because of the team. Thanks, Tracy. And yes, our job is not just bandages and ice packs. That's kind of a school nurse joke. But the staff are there in every building, every day, all day with the kids, addressing potentially life-threatening health conditions and sending every single one of those students home well at the end of the day. And that's our priority, and we don't lose sight of that. Interestingly enough, in the state report that I send in every year, they ask us, based on the health conditions that have been reported to the school for students and that we have health plans for those students, to address a certain number of RN hours. This year, the difference in the number of RN hours that Sequim School District has, that's me, and what is required for our student health conditions, we had a difference of 112 hours of need. Compare that to last year's hours of need at 42. Why is that? Well, last year we had a much lower in-person student body. So that's partially reflective of that. We normally have a need of between 60 and 80 additional RN hours. So the question is, how do I do that? It's the team. I don't do that. They are right there with being my eyes and ears and taking care of students all the time. When it comes to the student care, we're always looking at the number of potentially life-threatening health conditions or health conditions which require individual health plans of us. The current number is up quite a bit there. That is also reflective of the changes in our student body, but I also feel it reflects somewhat of the changes that we've started to address since the pandemic, which would be students who are immunocompromised or who have secondary health conditions that put them more at risk to COVID, and the plans we have in place for those students. So that's a pretty big bump. And the other thing is that we're also seeing a marked increase in the number of some of our mental health conditions since COVID that we weren't seeing before, anxiety being one of our largest. The OSPI's come out with new guidelines for students with anaphylaxis. I thought it was very interesting this year that they increased the anaphylaxis guidelines to start looking at multiple chemical sensitivities. So we do have both students and staff in the district, you can go ahead to the next slide, who have EpiPens because they go into anaphylaxis. They use them more than just 3 or 4 times a year, students as well. Plus additionally, the scents, the chemicals used in our environment increasingly affect students with migraines and other health conditions. So one of my goals for fall is to really start addressing environmental health as well under the new guidelines. So, well, we were talking about life-threatening health conditions. One of the reasons that the health services staff can be the feet on the ground and the eyes and ears is the massive, and I mean massive amount of training that they go to be in their positions. It's not required for their positions. You understand that they're non-licensed staff who have the ability to do first aid, CPR, and run an AED. This is just a small part of what they're going through every year, though, to be really secure in their position. And one of the newest ones, of course, had to do with COVID. The health services staff are the only staff in the district that have completed the respiratory protection training. We remain the only high-risk area in school districts. Plus the ongoing changes to all of the guidelines from the county and the state have been massive. Additionally, I won't read through them all, but the training, go ahead, goes on. Yes, the seizures, the PDAs, the training goes on, the multiple protocols. You know, I don't feel like they should have to make things up. Obviously, on the fly in an emergency, we'll always do what it takes to protect a student's health. But there's a lot of protocols in the district. So we lost the screen, Tracy. Oh, I didn't know if you knew that. I'm hoping you get it back.
It's on.
Oh, whoops.
So the next thing up was student immunizations. COVID has not been added to be a required student vaccine. The vaccine requirements changed a couple years back, and because of that, Artis personally goes through every vaccination record that comes into the district, which, thanks to her help, gives us a huge compliance rate for our district. 94% are compliant with the state guidelines for vaccinations. So yes, the pandemic, the endemic, where are we at? So it was interesting for me to attend a State Department of Health meeting a couple of weeks ago, where they talked about that the new guidelines, although they will be for COVID, generally talk about viruses as a group. And that's because right now there's about 9 viruses that are really significantly affecting people in our state, including students. And they really wanted us to go back to the point where we say every 6 student stays home. Well, that seems obvious, right? If you're sick, you should go home. But what school nurses were kind of hoping is that we could go back to the day where we said, if they don't have a fever, and if they really are well enough to be in school, and if they're COVID negative, they can make it through the day if their parent thinks so, and if the teacher thinks so. But what the state is saying, there's too many other things affecting our kids right now, and we really have to keep that in mind. So there are no new guidelines at this time from the state. We're expecting them in July or August. What the big change was for our district this year was the Learn to Return program through Health Commons and State Department of Health. And Jeff Stepp is my liaison at the OSPI, and that is our school COVID testing program. A little bit of history, it was hugely supported in districts by the CDC. Not only do we have our testing program, but we have a test to stay program. The test to stay program means if you've been exposed to COVID, you don't have to just stay home for 10 days anymore. If you mask and test negative twice in a 7-day period, you can be at school, of course, if you're asymptomatic. That was huge in increasing our kids' seat time. We had families going through multiple 10-day periods as the next person in the family started symptoms and were out, you know, many times over 20 days, which had a huge impact. We had no testing outages, and we know it was working because about 35% of our reports were positive, so we were catching a pretty big group of kids. Also, an overview comes with that program, 45 pages long. So I'm working on that. Yes, next year we will continue our Learn to Return program and continue to have tests available. We are looking at possibly the NAAT tests, which, although rapid in 15 minutes, gives us a much more sensitive return for our, you know, bang for your buck there, that hopefully they'll be a lot more like the PCR tests in their ability to actually pick up COVID. Funding, we do have COVID Central. They're funded by the Learn to Return program through the state. They are saying there'll be about 2/3 of the funding available, but the schools like ours that is already in the program will get consideration for continuing. They want us to move more to a send home a rapid test and have families responsible for the testing, although we still will be testing in the school's health rooms. And I think they see the COVID testing as part of an infrastructure that they're going to, the State Department of Health wants to consider keeping for a long time. And part of that Learn to Return program was all the things that got added into that this year. There's a consent We have to have a CLIA waiver in order to perform tests in our health rooms. That'll have to be renewed. Annual respiratory protection program for all of health services. And then, of course, there's the program maintenance. We do report every test to the state. And so health services is really ground zero when it comes to COVID and COVID information. You know, we've had a huge benefit in having COVID Central this year. I have to say that might be more my benefit than the actual health services benefit, because all of the contact tracing, you can go ahead, Tracy. All the contact tracing is now being done, but health services performed 3,350 of our recorded health room visits, and that doesn't include all the phone calls this year, which is pretty significant for our health room clerks. We performed 293 tests. We sent home many more. I think about 2 weeks ago, we ended up sending close to 7,000 tests home with our students.
Wow.
Yeah. And of course, the case management. So for every student who gets ill with COVID or gets exposed to COVID or traveled, that the travel requirements are gone now, they have to all be managed on an illness log, 1,304 on our illness logs. So once again, thank you, COVID Central, because they're the ones managing the illness logs, looking at the contact tracing, notifying the staff about students who are out and for what reason and for how long, and when to expect them back, and if they should have a mask on, and I think you get the issue. So in the template that Tracy sent me, she added that I should somehow address the strategic plan. So I have to tell you, I went to the strategic plan and I started looking at it and reading through it, and I thought about keeping our children safe, keeping them at school, protecting children at school, the massive amount of information that we have had to disseminate to staff, to students, to our families, and the amount of communication that required on the part of health services. So my job, although unchanged in regard to many things, has now evolved into much more public health nurse. And you know, I think that addresses the strategic plan in regard to community conversation and keeping everybody updated as best I'm able.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, do you have any questions? Love to answer them.
Go ahead, start yourself.
I just want to thank you as always, because it was 3 years ago, BC, before COVID, and we were looking at the flu policy.
The pandemic flu plan?
Yes.
Yeah, I've been reevaluating that. It's
Yes.
getting old, and now if this is going endemic, we need an endemic flu plan.
And Larry and I had come back from a ESD presentation on it, and we're like, hey, what are we doing about this? And then boom, we came into COVID, and we're working on making sure we can or get some funding for a full nurse and nurse more. So that work is happening on the state level. So we will continue to advocate strongly for that. But thank you for kept our students, our staff, and community safe with your focus on this. So thank you.
My pleasure.
Anything else?
All right, thanks.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, and we have also our annual professional development report coming up. Hello, welcome.
Hi.
Well,
That's the question.
If it's not, if I do it, okay, give it a shot. Okay. Well, welcome. We are so happy to be here, Casey and I. We are the professional development team. This is Casey Ryan, and I'm Rebecca Stanton. And this is a new role for both of us this year, and we have truly enjoyed the work and a lot of the collaboration. So tonight you're going to hear about what we did and how we did it, and your goal is to listen for some successes along the way.
So our work was framed to be useful and intentional, to be focused on the why, and to really help our staff focus on the why, not just the why of teaching, why of learning, but really why are we learning what we're learning in this particular session? And that was a big push that we really focused on through every one of our PD opportunities. And then to connect it to the strategic plans. So the multi-tiered systems and supports, the universal design for teaching and learning, the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and then the trauma-informed practices.
So how did we do some of this? We started the year with conversations with administrators in August regarding their building initiatives and how we could support their initiatives, as well as how we can support their new teachers too. So more on both of those later in the presentation. So here are some of the common themes throughout the district. And again, you're going to see some of the same things. UDL, MTSS, requests for PD, support from teachers. And you'll notice with MTSS, at the beginning of the year, we knew each campus was involved in some step of the work. They're all in different places, and that's normal. And this is a long process.
So our presentation is divided into 3 components. The first component is our professional learning and development. Here is our PLD schedule, and August, November, and March were in-service PLD days that were state mandated and state funded. So the topics revolved around things that the state wanted us to cover, but it was also helpful because it also connected to some of the things that we as professional development coordinators really saw that our staff needed, such as the universal design for teaching and learning, such as the talking about MTSS, and then even the professional learning communities, that piece as well. The collaboration time, that was time that we were able to provide to our staff, whether it was district or whether it was building time. As we worked from August to March, we really wanted to be responsive and flexible about the kind of PD that we're providing. So in the first session, we learned a ton about, one, it was all virtual. And unfortunately, it stayed virtual the entire way, because if it had not been virtual, that first menu of options may have worked just fine. But when you have 8 hours of seat time, that's a lot of stuff that your brain has to absorb. It was different topics. And so by March, we boiled it down to 2 things. And we found that, and we heard in the comments that that March 4th session was the best PD that we offered because of that. So.
Okay, so component 2, instructional coaching and mentorship. So another piece to our position is supporting teachers new to the district, coaching teachers new to the profession, and offering coaching as an option for teachers that wanted it. So here are some of our goals. This is what framed our work for instructional coaching. We wanted to make sure it was voluntary model. We didn't make anybody do this. They all jumped on board as we offered it at the end of a training we had with them. I feel so weird having my back to my and then flexible in length. They could do coaching with us as long or as little as they needed to. We tried to be responsive and adaptive in the process. It was teacher driven, what they needed, and then we worked counsel with them, providing coaching, sometimes in the moment, a lot of times just in a feedback process. And then the next piece would be, all of this is, we framed it all around the Dungeness framework for teaching and learning. And yeah, oh, don't, I'm not gonna switch yet. Okay, so here's our shift of coaches enrolled over time. So at the end of our first PLD day, we surveyed staff, and there were a lot of people that wanted to do coaching. we needed to boil that down to a reasonable number. So we started with first-year teachers, second-year teachers, added third-year teachers as we needed to. We started the year with 14, and then we went down to 10 in the middle of the year and 4 towards the end of the year. And then in our summary conversations, we had conversations about next year with some folks. Okay, this is mine too. Okay, so the next piece where we supported new teachers was our new teacher orientation. And we started that the 3rd week of August. When we left in June, we had 8 new teachers that were hired. And by August 19th, which was our first day, we had 15 teachers new to the swim school district. So this slide just shares a brief overview of, I mean, this is like barely, this might be like morning or something, but this is a brief overview of some of the things that we covered. And we spent a lot of time, okay, we spent a lot of time in areas 1 and 2 with our coaches.
So I'm gonna come over here. So if you look at this slide here, this really boils down to the 3 areas that we really tried to focus the work that we did, not just with coaching, but with the work that we're doing with professional development, culture of learning, curriculum, instruction and assessment, and then helping staff to become more flexible and responsive. And these are some of the topics that fell under each category that we focused on. And then the other thing is that it also, there's some resources here. Like, for example, there's the CHAMPS piece, which is part of positive behavior interventions and supports. And we found that to be very effective with our secondary coaches that we worked with, because they were asking a lot of questions about classroom management, and not just classroom management, but really creating instruction that was interesting for kids, that was relevant and effective for kids. And you can't do that until you have effective classroom management. And so we focused a lot with that and building systems of support into that. The following are just a few of the comments that people made about their coaching experience. I'll just read the first one. Tracy, I don't know if you can magnify that. It takes a village to raise a child. It definitely takes a village to raise a new teacher. Becky and Casey have been a big part of my village this school year. And we really try to really have a teacher-driven, coaching-informed process. So we didn't set the agenda for teachers, they set it for us. And then we informed upon what we were seeing, what conversations we were having with them about where that was going to go. And so it was a very intentional process. So I'll give you some time. You can read through these if you'd like. Okay, the third component is developing collaborative partnerships. When we started this job, historically, a lot of the partnerships that we ended up developing, they had been talked about being possibilities, but we had not seen them as a part of a plan. And so the first one was creating a professional development planning committee made of certificated and paraeducators. And we got that going in September, and by October, we had our first meeting. And the goal of that really was so that the district teachers, district paraeducators, they had a stake in what it is that we were going to be providing training on. That was really effective. These are the goals that we put together in our first session: collaborating, being open, engaging in the strategic work and the networking, and then also being an advocate for the learning that not only your building needs, but the learning that you feel your fellow staff need as well. And then connecting that to the strategic plan with the DIB, the MTSS, and the even the PLC work.
The nicest part about having that PD PC committee is it helped drive what our PD was. And so I'm going to give you some stats. Overall, we put forth 270 clock hours of PD this year through the Swim School District. Not everybody did all those hours. They were in a variety of ways. So in the coaching process, staff were able to earn up to 48 clock hours. Most staff members participated in Friday collaboration time, professional learning days, and district tri-days. They got a total of 75 hours. So if you're a new teacher, you could have earned up to 123 clock hours. That's important for renewing your certificate. So that's a big deal. I'm gonna stop talking. Our next partnership was with our paraeducator leadership team. They came to us and said, we just have different needs. Can we talk with you about those needs? So we did, and we listened, and out of that grew a partnership with Learning Support Services team. And Leah Bauman, who works out of that office, provided individual and group sessions to address paraeducator needs specifically when working with students.
So I'll stress the paraeducator piece. That was something that, like I said earlier, had not been traditionally something that the district had some focus into a collaborative relationship with the paraeducator leadership. So we really wanted to be sure they were involved in that as well. The last one was building leadership, whether that be the building, the campuses or the district administration as well. And the conversations that we had, we really wanted to be intentional and useful in what it is that we were going to provide. So here are just 3 examples from the middle school, the high school, and from OPA. Each of those deriving out of our conversations with the administrator and with even key staff as well. And each of those also certainly being available to other buildings, but we really wanted to be intentional about the PD that we're providing at that particular building, so it was effective and useful for them.
Okay, so moving forward, we're going to continue with some practices that we know that will help that help us to know what's important to staff, like surveys, right? And practices that help us develop and support staff new to the district, like new teacher orientation and the coaching and feedback model and getting block hours for that. So a new goal for us is already in the works. We are developing a video bank of trainings that include clock hours for staff to self-select their learning. So those are our new goals, and we're going to see what next year brings. And then, oh, that's our, this is our old PowerPoint.
So we're happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I 2 questions that I had. Well, actually more just one. I definitely appreciate the focus on new teachers. Because I think that support's needed. One metric I hear a lot, and I'm just wondering, when you said staff surveys, made me wonder, sometimes it's that first 5 years, and then a lot of times you'll get teachers that just say, nope, no more, and they're wanting to, another industry completely. I wonder if it's maybe in the future, if that's a component that also you'd be considers surveying as well, to say what support might have been missing for those individuals that choose not to.
Are you talking about like an exit interview question?
Yeah, but more along the lines of professional development. Like, was there something that would have helped you almost, but or even if it's a conversation, I just wondered if that
was a question we asked in our survey data each time we surveyed.
Okay,
So, yeah,
excellent.
What else would you like to see? What could have helped you?
Yeah. Okay. And then I think it was about classroom management. I think that it was about, I think there was a more of a folks talked about secondary with classroom management. Was there also a focus on elementary as well for that support given, or was that just based on the folks that you had?
Sure, the support was given, but what we heard from secondary, particularly the middle school, is that there was a need to find systems and management supports within those that would work for the myriad of concerns that they were having, whether it was not knowing how to, get kids into a room and get them going on their work, and then have engaging conversations in a way that was respectful and was edifying to each other, or it was just walking down the hallway, things like that. So at the elementary, a lot more, that was more of a holistic conversation. Becky, would you agree with that? It wasn't something that they necessarily asked for. It was things that,
Yeah, I would say though too, that remember, we're doing one-on-one work with specific teachers, brand new to the profession. So all really typical things that they need a lot of support with. So, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does, yeah. No, and I appreciate the
Yeah,
the
we did.
holistic aspects.
We were
certainly.
PK 12.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Other questions? Yes. go ahead.
So I'm thinking about that our students, when COVID hit, say the third graders, all of a sudden then when they're back in the classroom, they're at middle school. It's a pretty big jump for them. And then our third graders weren't even inside a building for the most part when they were kindergarten, first grade. So it's just complex training.
yeah,
And I like how you've brought in included the paras in, because the paras are such a vital part of all that conversation.
yeah,
And
they're
that's
doing a lot of that management.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That the teachers are not, when the teachers are not available, or even when the
Mhm.
teachers are available. So that was a voice that we really wanted to say, hey, we want to hear what you have to say.
all right. Remember, my mom was a kindergarten, first grade teacher back, and we had an influx of Vietnamese refugees in, and all of a sudden, mom is, I don't speak Vietnamese, I speak Spanish now. And then so finding her at that time was referred to as a teacher's aide. So just ongoing work, but professional development. So thank you, both of you.
Any other? go ahead.
One little question, just wondering whether or not, it sounds like you do a lot of great one-on-one with these teachers and helping them develop their skills, et cetera. Do you have a model where maybe more veteran teachers mentor or help with the coaching of new
When you talk
teachers?
about hopes and challenges, that's where we want to go.
Yeah,
We would love to grow this over time so that either those coaches become either trainers or mentors for, people that are 0 to 3, and then we could do that. We've talked about instructional rounds. We've talked about, showcasing the great things that are going on in the district. By having those teachers that are 0 to 3 or just interested in going to watch those great things that are going on.
The other thing too,
Yeah.
to keep in mind is that we have been a part of the Best Mentor Grant in the past. However, OSPI is not taking new applications, so we've been a part of it in the past. So we looked at applying for that way back in June of last year, August. Talked with Dr. Prine, and if we were to do that, we'd get $1,000, and it's a ton of compliance and reporting. And truly, it wasn't worth $1,000.
Yeah.
It wasn't. So.
And I'll also say that our goal has always been going back to the PDPC to really train the trainers.
yeah.
That's the model that we're hoping to, over time, get going, because why outsource things when you have resources right here? So I'd like to capitalize on those.
I love the idea of instructional rounds
Yeah.
and just having this sort of master teacher model where the sharing of expertise and background would be really builds community too, doesn't it? So,
And that's our hope with the professional learning communities, that we can start to grow that social understanding and social capital,
yeah.
so that then, it becomes, that's our flywheel, so to speak, of improvement.
Thank you.
But it's all at the dream stage right now. We're working towards implementation.
Well, we're allowed to dream.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Director Jeffries?
Yeah, I don't want to say too much. It just, I'm really impressed with the professional quality and the thought that's gone into this. Having been in the teaching world for a number of years. Basically, a lot of my professional development training, my earliest ones, I remember how to thread a 16 mm projector, how to use an opaque projector, how to use the stencil machine and mimeograph machines. And I do remember along the way some really horrific, angry professional development sessions between teachers and administrators that couldn't understand why we just didn't see what they were trying to do. This, if you've come a long way, or we've come a long way, I really appreciate what you guys have been doing, have done, and really support your efforts to the new goals and to make us better and better and better.
All right, thank you. Okay, that brings us to 11.01. We have our superintendent report.
I have only one thing to say tonight, and that is, as we have been sitting here this evening, the Olympic Peninsula Academy graduation was occurring over in the auditorium. Unfortunately, we were unable to attend because of the timing, but it was beautifully arranged. They have 8 graduates this year, and I guess that's a fairly high number for them. So I hope that we get to see some video or pictures or something from it, because it looked lovely and they were quite excited, and the principal and staff went to great trouble to make it very special for those 8 graduates. So
Great.
we're very proud of them.
All right,
That's
thank
all.
you. Okay, and that brings us to our board business. We're going to start with 12.01, which is the approval of the 6th grade math curriculum.
I move we approve the 6-8 math curriculum.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I second that.
Is there any discussion?
I just want to thank the presentation from Mr. Harris, and I remember the presentation we had for the high school, and that was Larry and I were, I think Larry and I were there. You were in the audience. But this seems to align it in there, so that's ready to vote for it.
Thank you. All right. Hearing no further discussion, please vote when indicated on your screen, on your device. All right, that motion is approved. Brings us to 12.02, approval of the 9th through 12th world language curriculum adoption. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, make a motion that we approve 12.02, 9 through 12 world language Spanish curriculum.
All right, do we have a second?
A second.
All right, we'll take Director Halverson's second, I guess, because I don't know which one.
I was going to try to do them all at once.
Do we have any discussion?
Just seeing the presentation at the scholarship ceremony with the work out of that department was tremendous.
Oh, yeah, for the stand.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
That was
Okay, please vote when indicated.
Okay, we're getting this electronic voting down.
All right, that motion is approved. 12.03, approval of the 9 through 12 social studies curriculum. Do I have a motion?
Mr. President, I move that we approve the 9-12 social studies curriculum.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
It's been a long time. It was when my daughter was in 9th grade when they got that.
Yeah.
So
It's time.
The only comment I'll make is I really appreciated the comment about that there is a need
Oh,
to
yeah.
keep that curriculum. I think there's a lot of folks, when they think of social studies, they think, well, But that, it doesn't change, but it certainly does. And I
As a
appreciate it.
historian, I say history happens every single day.
Absolutely.
Doesn't stop.
Yeah, so,
Today is a historical day for us in June 6th. So.
yep, absolutely. Yeah.
It's a big one.
All right. I don't know if I could see a hand up, if there was a hand up. I just want to make sure that I'm not passing up.
Not forgetting about that.
All right, please vote when indicated.
You gotta check this out because she doesn't know.
Oh, there we go. Switch
She
back.
fixed it.
Did I vote?
She fixed it.
Oh, great.
All right, that motion is approved. And that brings us to 12.04, track discussion. Did want to go ahead and bring that to the board. We had a request that was made, of course, so discussion about that request and kind of see where folks are at with it. So I know it's on our list of priorities, but from my perspective, I think it's well, everything on the list is important, right? But if there's ways of prioritizing things, I think we're all supportive of it. If there's different pathways that can help, then I am all about me personally, I'm all about a process that would help. But kind of open it up.
My question is just clarification. It's on our list, but when do we have it on a calendar as to when?
So my understanding, and superintendent, so feel free to weigh in here too. So it's not so much a calendar, because with the tiers, they're priorities. So it's not so much, even though it's a lot of folks kind of read it as year by year, but I think it's a little more fluid than that, because there's some projects, as we know, that have to be done at different times based on if school's in session, if school's not in session, the weather, cost of materials. So there's a lot of, I think, factors there that come into play. My understanding is sometimes we'll even look at certain projects and say, well, materials are really expensive for this particular project, maybe put that one off or adjust, and this one, materials aren't as expensive. So I think my understanding is all those factors come into play. Would you say?
I think that's definitely true. And I think talking with Winnaha, when Chris Mafori is with us, I've asked him to update all of the tier projects both for the website and for us. And so they are all working together, our staff and with him, to update all of that. So I think you'll be able to see more clearly, maybe when he presents, how that's all laid out right now. And, there is some fluidity there, but in general, I think when the capital projects levy was passed, although I wasn't here, there was some priority order established to things like, heating systems and communications and fiber, and phones and septic or whatever they all are. And so that went into the thinking, but I don't think, I'm certain there's nothing that is absolutely locked in a spot. Right now they're deep into the design for the ADA accessibility compliance with the elevator and that project and the design of all of that. And they're working too on communications and all of that, but there's some fluidity to it, like you said, based on costs and availability. And the part of the bus barn may tip over, and that's going to change the priority there, because it's I went to see it, it's sagging desperately on one side of the building. So things like that, Director Halverson, certainly affect the overall plan. Nothing is completely rigid, so I think there's room for flexibility there. But remember that the money comes in over time too. The money isn't just like sitting in the bank. It comes in and is collected over time. So planning has to be done around how that will support the projects that need to be done, because it relies on that capital project money.
Thank you.
Director Stott.
So we have our ability and policy to establish a committee. So my recommendation right off the bat here is that we do establish a community or whether it's called athletic facilities committee. I saw earlier, she was sitting back there, Leanne Nestor, who was, her son graduated 2 years ago, football team, and she had started a group back then, and Coach Moore was on it, and a couple of other folks that aren't here, but it was called SWIFT, and it stood for soccer, and then the W was to weld together football and track. And they met, I was there involved in it. And then I think COVID hit, I think was pretty much it. But it also is communicating to both the community and our parents and family of how public education is funded in our state, because we have learning funding and then we have facilities funding, and neither the two can meet, like ships in the night aren't supposed to run into each other. And so expressing that now, I've heard a lot about that the track is in this type of shape and we can't hold tournaments and so forth. And yes, that's true. Except I would really like to hear from our principals and our athletic director, because one thing of moving forward with asking for grants, I think we're going to have to put a stamp on it that this track is condemned. And I say that because in 2012, the people that were sitting here before us, they condemned the old, what was the community school building. And they had to do that to get some forward motion on, and so I just, the importance of that, and if that's what we need to do. But I also know, and like right now, I'm sorry for taking a longer time, but so Representative Theringer, who chairs the capital budget committee, now is the time to submit community projects for grants. And we missed the window when we were trying to do it before, but they don't go into session until January. And so, and then there's a district over by Spokane, has about 100 students, and they got a grant from NFL called Grassroots. But all that, you still got to have seed money. We got to have money in the bank. And so, and then we saw yesterday the work at the River Center, which was a whole bunch of good people working together. And Eric was standing next to me when I whispered to the vice chairman of the tribe that can we talk about. So there's opportunities there. And then the school district has always been the Park and Rec department for the city of Squint. And we need them to, now they gave a large donation or on something else, but we need that partnership. And then the same thing, we have a gym floor right across that needs to be replaced. We have tennis courts. The other work that is, and I appreciate what Coach Moore's input there, but the other work recalls some the field being realigned. And that's more than what was put into the capital projects levy for. Capital project was to just do the Band-Aid again on the track, because we need to pass a bond to build something bigger. And so I'm done, but I'll volunteer for a committee.
Okay, thank you. Other comments? Go ahead, Director Jeffers.
Yeah, the track situation, I'm not quite sure of the history of how we got ourselves in this position where it's not viable for a track meet because of safety and other standards that it doesn't meet, I assume.
Yes.
Being a former track runner, sprinter, coach, etc., I know the importance of the condition of that track. It's probably okay for walking and jogging, but if I was going full speed, working on, 400-meter relay handoff exchanges and so on, and hit one of those spots, it could be devastating. So I can understand why it should not or can't be used for quality competition. And my understanding is we've been traveling to the Port Angeles track to work out.
We have a group of sprinters that need to train. And so we would take them in the evenings to Los Angeles after their practices were over. Because you can't practice with another team at the same time without that constituting an actual competition. And limited what you can do with it. So we would take a group over there and they would work over there in the evenings.
And I assume we'd have to come up with some kind of situation like that because any replacement or even redo of our track would mean it would be closed for quite a while. Our track, while we replaced it. So we'd have to come up with a cooperative agreement, continue it. I think we've done that in the past with
Swim team.
swimming, and we've even
bowling.
combined gymnastics
Yep.
programs. So I know, things like that could happen.
So it should take 2.5 months to get it completely done.
Completely done. But what does that mean? That's another thing. We need to have somebody look at that. I don't know what's under that track.
Right, and it's cracked.
It may be a major
Right.
undertaking, and maybe we're talking a year and a half. By the grading field.
So that's why we need to have a committee so we can talk, because we're
So I
not.
think, I think we need,
He said even a full redo would be a month for excavation.
we'll sign him up and he can do that.
Because the only thing we have on our capital projects is to resurface the track.
Right.
And and we have no other money.
So we have
So-
Winnahaw in hand. They have engineering expertise. I know they kind of probably looked at the track, but we need at least, since they're on board already as part of this committee or whatever we decide, somebody that has the expertise on the engineering of what we need over there, whether it's just going to be a surface replacement or we need more infrastructure. I don't know. So what we're
They
looking
can
at.
speak to that. I did, when on the meeting with Chris McCory and Winnahaw the other day, I talked to them about the interest from the community about the track. And so they're on board with the concept of looking at it. And I think we can talk with them when they report at the next meeting about the progress of things. But many things are intertwined here too, like you don't do the track without doing the turf, because then if you do the turf, then it rips up the track. I think they have to be done simultaneously. I see the coach shaking his head, correct? Yes.
Most places, that's kind of how it goes.
Yeah,
I did
that's,
talk to the rep about that, and there's ways to get around that. And
Okay.
they don't have to be done simultaneously.
yeah, that's great. That's all the great work of the committee, certainly. And there's so much to work out. Yeah, and it's awesome that you're willing to work on it, so.
I do see Director Johnston has been patiently waiting with her hand up virtually,
Yes.
so thank you, Director Johnston.
Okay. No, I usually if you sit and listen long enough, somebody else will say kind of what you had on your mind, but I have a concern, I think along the lines of what other people have expressed, that, with inflation and costs of materials and costs of labor and everything increasing at a really unpredictable rate, that, we might have to start doing some triage on some of these capital projects that we had planned to do, because we just might not be able to afford them all with the money that comes in from that, or to do them all to the level that we would like to. So I really appreciate members of the community stepping up and saying, hey, look, we see this need and we're willing to try to think creatively and look at other ways to maybe raise some money and reach out to other community partners, some of the people that Jim was talking about, to see if maybe there's, another way to go about getting this done, or that at least there's a way of supporting the district and getting it done. Because I just, as this goes on and, you just see what's happening in the world, I've just been very concerned about how we'll be able to do all the projects that we have on that list right now. And I also agree with the point that Joan was making, that, anybody who's done a construction project knows if you have a comprehensive project, if you can actually try to get everything done at once instead of piecemealing it, it's so much more effective. But whatever we decide to add, if we add the turf, if we decide to try to add, upgrading any of the other athletic facilities that are connected with the track, obviously that's going to add a lot of expense. Even though if we're able to try to figure out how to pull that off, we will certainly be glad that we did it, because, then we're not, running over the track to try to fix the turf right after we fix the track. And, so anyway, I mostly just want to say thank you to the people who are stepping up, and I really am excited about the idea of reaching. I mean, I think there are a lot of people in our community who want to see this happen. And there are people in the community who fund things like this. And so, I look forward to seeing how it develops. And thank you for raising the profile of this.
All right. And so,
One more thing, Dan.
sure.
So, in order to fix the restrooms that are at the stadium, we had to wait till the city tore up for here, because all the piping ran underneath First Street, and it had been there since 1920. And so it would have been a waste of money for us to allocate funds to fix the restrooms at the stadium, because we still couldn't have used them until the city tore up First Street and and put all that new infrastructure. And that occurred. And now we can allocate money to fix those toilets. So that's what we're talking about. It's not just resurfacing the track. It's the irrigation system that's in the field. It's and all of those, it's not a, and I just, because I've been on the facilities committee back before I came onto the board. And so, one time we ran a bond and people did not vote for the bond because there was athletic stuff on there. So then we turned around and ran the bond again without the athletic stuff. And then the other people said, well, I'm not going to vote and support that. And that's our ongoing dilemma. And I know some of you are new to our community and how that works and how we get funded. And so,
So I am hearing that the board is certainly supportive of forming a committee. And would that be accurate?
Yes.
And it also seems like it shouldn't, the scope of it shouldn't be solely limited to the track, because there's other factors that apply. So it should be more about just the what was the phrase you used? Facility or athletic facilities.
Yeah, be good to be able to message that all out type thing. But the higher priority right now is that track and field.
Okay.
But because having those conversations could eventually lead to a bond or a new capital projects levy just for athletics, but we can't run that until the current one expires.
Right.
So,
okay.
Yeah. But if we had money from somewhere.
Well, yeah, that's it. Yeah, and I think that's why it's certainly important that we have community stakeholders on there, but as well as partners as well. We have partners that have a vested interest and want to. Well, I would think all people have a vested interest with the schools, right? But this is for the students, but as you said, also serves.
Well, if we had a up-to-date facility out there, then instead of having to go several counties over for a state meet. We could hold the state meet here and people could come eat in our restaurants, stay in our hotels.
Absolutely.
Generate money for us.
Here, here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Sounds like a good topic for the city council.
yeah, let's go.
All I was going to do was offer logistics to get a committee set up. Do we have our two board?
One
reps, or
or two. Definitely Director Stoffer certainly has volunteered. And we can't have three. That's
No.
we can't have three or more, unfortunately. Yeah. So we could either have it just for Director Stoffer. I don't know if anyone else expressed interest or want to express interest.
Okay.
Director Jeffries, it's good to have a, little track experience. On that.
Yeah, so
Nothing
if,
on track experience, I don't
I
think.
do.
Okay, all right.
Way back. How am I gonna run now?
so we can,
Pass this on to our new superintendent, didn't she?
pardon me?
Didn't our new superintendent to be successfully get a new turf athletic facility? Or is that somebody else?
Yeah, in the interviews, yeah, she
Yeah.
did
I-
something,
But
yeah.
anyway,
Yeah, I'm certain she'd want to be involved, but what I can do if you'd like is reach out to our two directors and the presenters here tonight and start getting a framework established for the committee, and people can step forward and volunteer. The committee can decide on the size and the membership and all of that, maybe with a core group of people, if that's acceptable, and start just agenda building and doing some planning just to get it launched.
Yeah, maybe.
Leanne, that was here earlier. Do you guys know Leanne? But I have about 50 emails from her from that other time still here. So she's a wealth of knowledge. That's why I went, well, it's not reinvent the wheel. To have a.
Okay.
And I'd say maybe, touch base with Director Jeffries, Director Stoffer on the community partners too, and make sure we can maybe reach out to, I think that representation is gonna be important for
Absolutely.
fundraising type purposes and whatnot, so.
A lot of bake sales.
Do you need,
Oh dear, no, you can't bake enough cookies.
do you need an official motion to form the committee, or are you good with?
I'm fine with it. If the
Okay.
board is fine
All
with
right,
it. So we'll
Okay.
get started on the infrastructure of that and get it launched.
Okay.
Best we can.
Excellent.
Here, it'll take a little time just to get organized, but
All right.
we can do it.
Yeah, it's good
Can I ask
done.
a question? Do you guys take private donors for that?
Mhm.
Okay.
Sure.
I just heard a rumor that somebody had offered to donate a new turf field and something silly held it up from happening.
So
I was just
first we
wondering-
need
I was
to-
curious.
Give me their number right now. I'll call.
Yeah.
So first we need the committee to establish and then establish a bank
I
account
just heard a rumor.
and
I
a nonprofit number. And then that's where the funding would go and would sit there. So that's the.
I know Leanne has mentioned Lakeside.
Yep, yeah, I was on there before. They were offering to,
What's her name? Leanne?
yep,
Nestor.
but working with Representative Theringer, and that just is writing up a grant, basically proposal. And right now would be the time to get that submitted before they go back into session in January.
Yeah.
Because
Be a
that's,
line item in the budget.
yeah, that's a pretty big item, so.
That's huge.
I've heard of other grants, too. I've been talking to other schools that put new track things.
Yeah,
So
excellent.
hopefully more.
Good.
Yeah.
That's kind of research.
That's a pretty big one for the state legislators.
Yeah.
I mean, they just funded a big chunk at the River Center. And so,
Beautiful.
Okay.
but we gotta have money in the district has to have, yeah, you always have to have matching funds.
So, all right, Director Stoffer, Director Jeffries, thank you for volunteering. And we'll be able to have you check in periodically, through the board communication, just to see how things are going. So thank you very much. And thank you to those who attended tonight. So.
Good job.
All right, we're gonna keep moving along. We have a 12.05, a WIAA annual renewal.
Speaking of sports.
Yeah, tonight for sports.
That's an easy one.
That's
Something's happening. Yeah, it does.
Yeah, we
My
have to,
board docs is down. Hold on for just a moment.
we have to sign it.
But yes, I believe it's gonna require a motion.
I move that we renew our annual WIAA
Membership.
agreement,
Membership.
membership.
Second it.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to renew. We have any discussion?
No, you're welcome. We're probably be here to midnight if you want to hang out.
No, but there's no more discussion of any other stuff that.
We're talking, we got.
There's not.
Not of that particular topic.
Okay, thank you.
So for me to speak, I would have had to sign something earlier before I
Yeah.
came in, is that correct?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that, and this was the last one,
Oh,
last meeting.
No, we have a meeting next on the 23rd.
It's just schools
For that
out
year.
here, but
Yeah.
we're here.
Yeah, we're here
We're
all
here
year long.
All summer long.
Yeah.
Was it in reference to the track or?
We'll track, yes, I have students, I have 2 boys that do track, but also the middle school, my son is Elijah Brown, you actually answered my email. So in reference to that and like some stuff with that,
Okay.
that's all I was gonna. I was really kind of appalled.
sorry. Yeah.
Sorry.
And I have 3 kids in the high school as well,
Yeah.
so. Yeah,
Yeah.
Sorry.
and my husband works with Pearsall, so we're, talking to him. as
Put
well
you on the
about
committee.
that. That's why he told me that the meeting was here, so I came over after work.
Oh,
Okay. Thank you.
okay.
Yeah, my son was here. so-
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay, thank you.
well, and next meeting, when we have next meeting, you can either in person or virtual. You can do the raise hand virtual and speak too. So that's an option too. Yeah, we definitely want to hear your voice though. So.
Okay, great,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay.
All right, and I don't think we have any discussion on the WIA approval.
Just that it's, we do it every year. It's a formal or just dotting the I, crossing the T.
But
we
the
used to have
deadline
a-
is here.
What's that?
The deadline is here. so,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it needs to be done.
We used to have a board member was kind of like the WIA.
Right, yeah. uh-huh.
You can go ahead and vote.
Is it time to vote?
Yeah.
Dang, you should have hit me and told me to stop.
Well, I was waiting for mine to log in anyway, so I just got logged in, so. All right, that motion is approved. That brings us to student advisory vote discussion. I believe a few of you might have been on the WASDA networking call, that last not WASDA networking call that they had. I was, well, me personally, I was intrigued by the conversation. I of course know that it's, what was communicated is it's not legal to have student members actually vote.
Counting vote.
Yeah, because they're of course not elected by constituents and other reasons too, but there are some districts that are practicing more of an advisory vote, and I think it, from my perspective anyway, I think it really kind of validates that voice in a way that I think is important. Yeah, I'm sure there are topics that are probably maybe not appropriate for students to vote on, but then again, there's that education piece, just like there are topics that's not appropriate for us to vote on because of conflicts of interest or those types of things. So that could be an education piece from my perspective, but it does seem initially all that we're doing tonight is just a discussion about if we want to proceed, or if this is something that the board is interested in proceeding with. If it is, then I think the next step would be either making some adjustments or creating a separate policy that would specifically address how this would look. If this is a topic that the board is interested in pursuing. So, Director Jeffers?
I know Martin's been working on this, and we've talked about it for several meetings, few years anyway. At least I have somewhat think they were underutilized just by reporting on the latest happenings at the various schools, which you can read about in newsletters. And getting more issue-oriented, maybe project-oriented for them. We've talked about that in the past. I do think we'd have to be careful how we set it up. I would like to see some changes, if needed, changes to policy and a procedure written that would allow this rather than just jumping into it and saying, well, we'll write a procedure for this one day for policy. Because I think it's, yeah, we do have to be very careful. There are probably some thing we would ask their advice on. You know, how would you vote if? But I don't know exactly what those are. But we probably need to better define that. But I do think that once they got used to the idea, we're going to ask them. And you know, that as we discuss these issues and before we take a vote, we're gonna, what do you think? You know, Alicia, what do you think? Caleb, what do you think? You know, and they get used to that idea that they are going to be asked. I think it's would work out fine. Plus, if we do a good job of getting our student reps, which we have the last several years, we've had some very good ones. They're amazingly insightful, and they have insights we don't have.
For sure.
So I'm all in favor of it. I think we just need to be careful.
Yeah.
Or not careful, that's not the right word. Do our due diligence and do it right.
Sure.
Well, and I think part of that is, I think that protects the students just as much as it protects the board, to have a real clear process, procedure, and policy. I think what was interesting about WASDA's talk that I attended was the idea of a really thorough onboarding and orientation and mentoring of the students so that they're not just trying to figure it out. And they really had a pretty robust approach to it with WASDA, and I'd want to look into that some more. But I think having a specific policy and or policy language would be very helpful for the students as well as for us. I think advisory vote is a good move, in part because you know, having students on the board is the mission of civics. We're trying to help students participate in the community and engage with issues of concern to them. And if we give them a vote, then advisory vote, it matters. You know, they have they can express a point of view. And I think that's really important, not only for them, but for the students they represent. And that is something that I think we should work on in the next year. I've met with a few students. I actually met with a really interesting teacher at the high school who runs the Scranton High School Improvement Club, Craig Brooks. And he and I had a great conversation about just building community and building a civics awareness for students. And I think this is a first step in that, helping them be more part of our team and participate in it appropriately.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you guys saw the email, because I reached out to Logan of the WASDA, and he is gathering the information from the other districts that are further down. The train has left the station type thing. WASDA is working on a policy and with that guidance. And then at the annual conference, when I quickly looked at the survey of things that are going to be offered, there's, I think what I counted was 4 up to maybe 6 sessions, separate sessions on this specific and how to utilize your student rep. So, and I think right now is a great time for us as we'll be interviewing 2, and we can establish before the next school year, but at least here's the beginning of truly leaning into their voice and hearing. Now, one we were talking with was wanting to know if they were going to get paid for that voice, and we went,
Yeah.
But
one step at a time.
yeah. Yes. So I don't know what we'll.
So it sounds like we need to, if WASDA is writing up the policy about this, so we should sort of take that as guidance once that's developed.
Did they see how quickly they were doing it?
Logan told me he would call me back either Wednesday or Thursday. And Logan is pretty quick on, and And he was also trying to get the other districts that have something in place or have, and so.
That would help a lot.
Yeah, and I was gonna go back and see if that session that I'm assuming you were there too, Larry, because typically it's taped, it used to be every week, now it's it's twice a month now.
They started recording those because they.
I think they were planning to with the new format, so I was gonna go back and see the synopsis or something, basically, so, but yeah, that would be.
Yeah. And depending on the timeline of when WASDA would release it, or if we have several examples that we can just make sure are in compliance. I would love to see us have, we're kind of wrapping up a school year, but we're gonna be starting another school year in the fall. I would love to see a process in place
For that, yeah.
When we have our student board reps in the fall, the first meeting they attend, they would be able to.
Whether WASDA has their policy or not, it'd be nice to have something.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. So,
Okay,
all right. So.
did Pat have something?
Doesn't look like it.
I'll just, I'll just jump in briefly. I'm really glad to hear about all this, to hear this discussion. My only thought is it's not from our perspective, it's from the student's perspective. And I think Marin's got her finger on this a lot better than I do, so I would defer to her. But I know that a lot of times, it looks to me like students are coming into our meetings and they might have tests the next day. They might have papers due. They have a lot on their plate. And I don't want students to feel pressured to vote on things that they maybe haven't had time to familiarize themselves with or feel put on the spot. So I'm not sure how we balance that on the one hand, I want them to feel like they're full participants to the extent that is, that we're able to do that. And as you said, obviously it can only be an advisory vote, not an actual vote. But maybe what I'm thinking is that in our policy, I feel like they should feel free to abstain if they feel like they're either not familiar or they don't, they just don't have time, or whatever. And that, it's one of those things, hey, if they have an opinion on it, if it's something they're familiar with, if it's something that they feel strongly about, and that, like the curriculum, I suspect that that's something that students might actually have some knowledge or some really helpful feedback on. And maybe they would feel comfortable talking about that. But so that's just my 2 cents. I don't want whoever is the student rep to feel like, oh, this is just, that this has become something that is burdensome and stressful for them. I really want them to be able to come, contribute as they feel, that they can, and that they're talking about the stuff that they know about. But not that this becomes another, because you tend to get the kids like, Elisa and Caleb, who already have, like I said, a bunch of stuff on their plate. And anyway, I'd be interested in Marin's, anybody's feedback on that, but that's my only thought as I'm listening to this discussion.
I think that's a really good point. And I think it can come into the onboarding and about the power of the abstention. I think also they don't have access to board docs. Okay, so the rest of us, we can sort of look through the materials before the day, hopefully, and make a reasoned decision about, for them, it would all be new when they would come in and find out, oh, this is what we're talking about. And so I think we'd have to sort of figure out a path where they could be some of the materials could be shared with them before the day.
Could be kind of alerted ahead of time. to
Through
these
the,
things. Sure.
either through Tracy or.
They have access. to
public.
Oh, they have
it.
access to, okay, I thought it was just ours, okay.
Yeah, no.
They can't
But-
see.
There is executive content and administrative content that
Oh, okay.
requires the law.
Okay, so
But
they would
have
see all the
All
documents. that-
public comment.
Yeah,
Content,
okay.
yeah.
So that helps, but I think, part of this will be the onboarding and making sure that that we do take care, that we're not exploiting them in any way, that
Yeah.
they can abstain, and it's perfectly honorable for somebody to say, well, I really feel I need more time to understand this issue, or maybe it isn't central to their experience at the high school or whatever, so that abstention is perfectly honorable.
Yeah.
Recommended in a lot of cases, so.
Yep.
But that is a good thing.
Yeah, no, I'd say definitely the onboarding needs to really be focused on the abstention as well as the policy and procedure. If for any reason they feel like there's, so I think I mentioned conflict of interest potentially, but yeah, broader than that.
Yeah.
Certainly in their case, should be referenced.
And
So,
WASDA has it's called student rep page.
Yeah.
And it's a whole network where then they can chat amongst themselves and get what Logan spends a great deal of time guiding, mentoring themselves. Good.
Dr. Jeffries?
Yeah, going back to what Pat said, how flexible we can be on agenda setting so that we're not getting ready now to vote on an issue where we're gonna ask the students and they had to get home to study for the test.
Yeah,
or-
that AP test that day.
Right.
Yeah.
Or we had a rep not too long ago, who was also on the tennis team. And that he would come in sometimes late because the tennis match had just finished. That sort of thing. So I think, some flexibility and planning it so they know the issues they're going to be asked for advice
Yeah.
on. Consent agenda, well, what do you think about the consent agenda? I'm not sure that's, where we want to put our efforts.
But they might have been really interested in the track, that would be.
Yeah.
Right, the
Yeah.
track discussion, we could have, if we had a track athlete, could have maybe moved that up on the agenda to make sure the students could get input. I don't know how flexible we can be in that,
I think we can.
Yeah.
Make some adjustments.
especially if it's in the interest of student input and student welfare. I
Might
need to get home and study for the test.
Yeah, might be a way to separate the two types of issues too. Not that it's always predetermined, but a board business part one, board business part two, part one would have included maybe curriculum, track discussion, and then,
Health services.
health services, and
Yeah.
then as board communications discussion, that might be part two, later on in the evening. So,
Yeah.
So that's
sounds
something
good
to
enough.
consider.
yeah. Okay.
Good idea, Pat.
Yes. Okay, well, I appreciate the discussion, and I think it's something to move forward and take a look at, and as soon as we get some resources on some policies, maybe have sometime this summer, maybe have a
Yeah,
draft to look at.
I'll keep on with Logan and
Okay.
to
And Regan, Logan and Regan.
yes. But for the WASDA stuff, it's with, but I will. Hey, Logan, what do you got going?
All right, 12.07, board communication discussion. I don't know how in-depth, I don't believe we've had an in-depth discussion about this. Part of this can be also had more in a workshop retreat kind of format as well, but when there's potentially conflicts maybe with what folks understand about our communication, specifically amongst each other as well as amongst each other along with members of the public. The two things come to mind for me anyways, and that's why I want to bring it to y'all, which is number one is just compliance, we need to make sure we're in compliance with OPMA. Because those chain communications can create issues there. And then number two is what is best practice as a board, just with being responsive to the community, yet also having good practices in place for speaking, communicating to the public, whether that be, in this case, I think more specifically about written communications, emails and such. So thought it was just important to have this conversation, make sure we're all on the same page on those discussions. And I need to make sure that, you know, I serve as a spokesperson for the board, but serve, you know, that I am meeting what your expectations are as a board to what gets communicated, what doesn't get communicated, who communicates to what. So with that, I'd welcome your feedback and discussion.
So can I weigh in from the ether? And I'm mostly just asking for a discussion. I'm not necessarily, well, I have a point of view, but I'm open to input, which is that my view of our role is that we are each independent elected officials who need to be responsive to the public. We each have a school district email address that is made available on our website for the public to communicate with us. And I have a very strong respect for chain of command and for unity of messaging. And so I don't think it's in anybody's interest for school board members to each go off in separate directions, responding to the public when there are, where there are issues that may involve an individual student or an individual staff member, and there are things that need to be going up through the chain of command, through the teacher, the administrators, the superintendent, et cetera. But I also think that it is discouraging to people to feel like they're reaching out to individual board members and hearing nothing back, in the interest of, well, it's not my job, I'm going to let Eric do it. And so I really hope that we can come up with a consensus about how to deal with outreach, with legitimate outreach from the public that allows the board to communicate to people that I received your communication. I can understand why you're concerned. Here's my understanding of how, what the process works and where you should be addressing your concern. And then allowing the process to work, but also, like I said, not just having people send emails that don't get responded to. And if our response is not a substantive, like, well, here's what I think you should do, or boy, you're right, that was a terrible thing that happened. But if you're just saying, I received this, I can understand why you're concerned. I think you need to take this to, I'm going to pass this on to the superintendent, or I'm going to pass this on to the president of the board, and to make sure that you get the attention that is warranted. That seems to me that that's a reasonable way to handle that. And and then the question is, who do you copy on that? Because if you're just sending out that email in response to an email you get, but the superintendent doesn't know, you don't know, nobody else knows, then that's when it seems to me that you do get at cross purposes, because nobody knows what's going on. And so then that raises the question of, well, shouldn't you be copying everybody on that? And so then that raises the question of, well, shouldn't you be copying everybody on that? And so then that raises the question of, well, shouldn't you be copying everybody on that? And so then that raises the question of, well, shouldn't you be copying everybody on that? And so then that raises the question of, well, shouldn't you be copying everybody on that? And so then that raises the question of, well, shouldn't you be copying everybody on that? And so then that raises the question of, well, shouldn't you be copying everybody on that? And so then that raises the question of, well, shouldn't you be copying everybody on that? And so then that raises the question of, well, shouldn't you be copying everybody on that? And so then that raises the question of, well, shouldn't you be copying everybody on that? And so then that raises the question of, well, shouldn't you be copying everybody on that? And so then that raises the question of, well, shouldn't you be copying everybody on that? And so then that raises the question of, well, shouldn't you be copying everybody on And then there's the question of, is that acceptable to copy everybody on it? So I don't know, you know, I'd like to get some clear guidance on that to make sure that we're doing it right. But I think those are the issues that I've identified about how that I see as board communication issues that I'm looking forward to hearing the discussion about.
Director Jeffries, you would raise your hand.
Yeah, I would say, well, this discussion goes with that whole 1000 series of policies that we have. We have some that are still outlying out there, you know, 1825, some others. Taking a look at policy 1620, the policy and the procedure, which pretty much outlines the spokesman for the board and so on and so forth. So we could have that understanding, probably taking a look at what best practices are and maybe even what legal tells us is, because any of our communication is public, could be public record. And given some of our recent situations, that seems to be, could be real delicate matter if we misspeak somehow. I do agree coming up with a generic response. But especially if it, you know, I do appreciate responses that I see that Eric has responded to something. Then I know that it's been responded to. In the past, we've had, you know, presidents that didn't always respond, and it was kind of, they just didn't respond. So sometimes I would, and I'd say, thank you very much, or, you know, hear your concern, and I'll pass it along, something generic like that. Sometimes that's not very satisfactory to whoever sent the email, but that's really all we can say. Basically, pass it on to the board president and the superintendent, let them deal with it. And then we sure don't know all that's going on behind the scenes. And I don't want to misstep and say something that disassembles whatever's happening behind the scenes. And I think some kind of generic understanding that this is what we can say, or this is what we can do, especially if we get those individual emails. I usually don't get individual emails. Most of the ones I see are sent to the entire school board, which I think, Joan, you see whether you're on you see the school board emails?
I'm not certain I always do, or not, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't know what group someone has set up.
It depends
Sometimes
on,
I do, I know that I do,
Right.
but I don't, if I don't see it and I don't know that I don't see it.
But the issue Pat brought is some kind of response, so whoever sent the email knows somebody looked at it
Sure.
at least, that they did get some kind of communication. But I still think it's part of a bigger pile, that's not a good word, of policies, some that, you know, on confidentiality and some of those other things, and board director behavior and ethics, and it's all tied in together somehow, that I think we need to have that bigger discussion.
I think the first, this is based on my understanding, so I could be incorrect, but if an email comes in to all 5 of us, and I believe it's not a violation of any kind of OPMA or anything for technically any of us to reply and then CC the rest of the board. The problem is, I think once I also reply and CC the rest of the board, let's just say if it happened in that order. So in Pat's example, she had replied saying, I've heard your concern, obviously, so important, right? They want to make sure that we've got it, it's not in the abyss, it's, and then it makes perfect sense from just email protocol, right? Let other folks know that you replied to it, CC other folks. I think if she were to be the first one to reply, that's not a violation, but then I could reply to that individual. I do not believe I could then reply to the entire group that was CC'd at that point as the second person or the third person, fourth person, fifth person. I believe that's when it becomes, you have multiple email messages with the board, is my understanding. Maybe that is something that, I don't know if we could ask that question to Lorraine potentially to,
Yeah, they talked about that in.
that was,
Can't do.
that was my understanding. So I think that speaks to, I think, Pat's question about, CCing, folks on it, even though that makes perfect sense from a communication perspective, just if we were, but then, other than that, whether or not individuals reply to saying, I heard your concern, it'll be responded to by superintendent, school board president, whomever, feel free to reach out again if for some reason you don't get some back, something like that. I mean, I can't see that being within itself an issue.
So is what you're saying that we should do that, but just not CC the other board members?
Correct. Or, well, I'm not saying we should,
But
that's
then
for
we
us,
don't know.
that's for us to agree on from a,
Yeah,
I don't believe that it's a violation. If that's what we want to agree on as a board, that that's acceptable, that's what we would agree on. There are,
in
here's-
which, when we're writing 1620, we would.
here's, well, you, Director Stafford, Director Robinson, I know you do have some thoughts, so go ahead.
So first, the school board address has all 5 of us and Joan and Tracy. So if people use that, if they pulled it off of the website, it goes to all of us. And so like I've saved that in my address. Now, once in a while in my legislative work, then I'll turn around and copy Joan again and copy Tracy. The other thing that always, when you think of the basic format of emailing and I'm going to our military days, so the 2 line is the action line, and that means there's action, and copy that's for information. And that's over the years, folks get, but with this particular incident, I'm going to call it, I'm trying not to get too far out of the head of the school. We had, and we heard tonight too, of people asking, how do they contact, they didn't know about these policies. They didn't know about, and to me, that's an overall advocacy training information out to the community. And yet, in this particular one, so imminently, did any of us know that we had all those emails in our junk file? And it wasn't until she called me up and said, how come you haven't answered my emails? And I went, what are you talking about? Because I know her from she was, and I then went, oh, thank you. They're in there because of it. And they just want to be heard. And we heard that tonight too. They want to know that we've heard them. And I appreciate Pat's reply because it also came from a mother and gave a little different perspective. And I believe they heard us and we were sincere in that. And from there, having an elevator speech, we'll call it, or our standard of how to reply. But it is, it's always been frustrating when there's an email and we're wondering who has replied. Has anybody replied? And that because our community, they're like, well, no one's replied to me. So how do we want to know, they want to tell them that I believe that we hear you. Doesn't mean we're taking action, but at least we hear you. And here is the process. You know, this needs to go to the superintendent. Have you gone to your building principal? Because that's when you look at when you file a complaint, it starts off at the lowest level. Was there with a conversation between the parent and the teacher? Okay. No, they went from parent straight to the board. And now, of course, there could be some items that are well deserving to get wrapped up because of the nature of the situation. But are they taking those steps? And that's part of our role, I believe in Mitchell. So, sorry, I'm done.
Well, I think that we're all, I see, first of all, the need of, there is this perception out there, and I have talked recently with parents who just think the school board is doing nothing, you know, and so this does sort of feed that when we don't respond very quickly to emails. So I see the frustration and the need for there to be a quick response. I also think in our particular context, just speaking for myself, we're all grown-ups and we sort of know generally what appropriate language to use and how to present ourselves in a way that's neutral. It says, well, I hear you, but this will go through channels and all that kind of stuff. Now, sometimes the board may not be made up of entirely of grown-ups. I don't know, we're lucky. So in terms of formulating policy, we have to think about that it won't always be us, you know, it's going to be other people. So those are just things that come to mind. When I think one of the, maybe it was a different one, maybe it was the one about the dance. When I got that email, I just emailed Eric and I said, this really concerns me. Are you going to address it? And he wrote right back and he said, yes. So then I felt like, okay, then I know it's going to be dealt with and he's going to respond. And I've made clear my concern to him about it. So I can sleep at night knowing that that was taken care of. So that's another way to think of it, is if we do have a spokesperson, that if we get an email like that, we write to that person or call them and just say, are you going to do this? And if not, then
And there was a perfect example of a situation that happened when I was traveling. There was an email that went out to everybody. And I don't know if y'all know this, but I was having a phone conversation with Pat. And Pat replied on my behalf, just because I only had my phone and it wasn't going to be a very thoughtful response, and you know, flying and moving around from airplane to airplane. So I think, you know, and she was happy to step in and grab that particular response. And so I think, you know, again, that conversation probably would have, you know, are you going to reply? Boy, I'm not going to be able to reply until I'm in the middle of work. I've got a classroom full of kids around me. I don't know if I'm going to be able to. Well, I think this is so urgent, and maybe that is a decision that does have to be made because of the urgency of it. I would like to say that the assumption would be, depending on what type of issue, that I would like to assume that who's ever in this chair, that whoever that board president will reply, or superintendent will reply, depending on.
Or
depending on the
delegate
issue.
it because you're in the middle of something.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Can we ask Victoria here in a moment?
Couple things. I just want to clarify. In the past, I wasn't always sure whether the board president had replied or not because I didn't see anything.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate it when you get copied on your response, then I know it's been made and I feel, like I said, I can get some sleep, you know, I don't worry about it. Number two, Director Stauffer mentioned, well, and Director Pickens mentioned OPMA and by getting some training more up to date. I know they do it at onboard, but that's been a while. A few years ago when I was first, we had actually the Attorney General's office came to swim and gave an OPMA workshop, but only 2 of us were allowed to go. And that was the Attorney General's office mandate. Only 2. And I've had that happen at WASDA also, where I wasn't allowed to be on in a breakout session because I was in District 6 or something else. because there are already 2 members of SQUIM in the District 4 discussion room, and Waza said because of OPMA concerns, you can't be in there. So I know there's issues that common sense adults might not realize, that we need some training or information from our lawyer or from the Attorney General's office on when we are crossing that OPMA line. It may seem reasonable to us, but they may say, well, that's fine, but it's illegal. So I think that's something that we need to consider.
Director Johnson?
Well, number one, I guess my first thing that I would say is I think that we should all assume that any email we ever write will become public. And so unless it's regarding a confidential matter, and that should always be the guiding voice in our head when we're writing an email. And so I always expect that anything that I write could become public, and I'm okay with that. So my view of it is, well, a couple of things. I think that obviously the best news for somebody who's reaching out to us is to hear that either, the president or the superintendent or someone, the appropriate person is going to be addressing it. I think it's a secondary thing, and also matters to hear that other individual board members got their communication, because partly what we're doing as board members is listening to the public and receiving input from the public. So I would strongly advocate for a policy if it is consistent with the law, and obviously I don't want to break the law. And so I think we need to get whatever guidance we can get. But I would strongly advocate for a policy that allows individual board members to respond to individual members of the public who reach out to them with a concern, and to copy the other board members and the superintendent and Tracy on their response, so that you can know, so the other board members know what that person said, and then they can choose to or choose not to respond themselves. We're 5 people. This isn't a giant, unwieldy organization. And as I just think I want to have the ability, people vote for us, and I think we ought to have the ability to communicate with them. And I think that we ought to have the ability to say, I appreciate you reaching out to me. And I also think that if Maren sends that email, or if Larry sends that email, I'd like to know, and I'd like to be copied on it. So if I'm way off base here, I am no OPMA expert. And if that is not something that we can do, and somebody can show me the law that says I can't do it, I won't do it. But there is no common sense reason that we should not be able to do that. And like I said, understanding that any of those communications can become public, I don't have a problem with that. So I just think that's common sense. And if the law, the law doesn't always lead you to the common sense solution, I understand that, but I think that is the common sense solution. And that, sometimes you might hear from a member of the public and you think, and you see that, oh, Eric's responding, and you go, okay, good enough for me. But there might be other times where you just feel like, I feel the personal need to reach out to this person and tell them thank you for getting in touch, even though I'm not the one who's actually handling their problem. So that's where I come down on that.
We could use the policy 1620 and the 1620P, because that's the board superintendent communications type thing. And if in our mind and as an adults, we're thinking of, are we taking action? Does this, because that's the basic of OPMA, and even going having a quorum. Are we taking action? Are we having a meeting? Are we having a discussion? And I like the we're all adults here type analogy. If there's, did we take action other than the superintendent was notified?
Yeah, I mean, from what I'm looking at this policy language, I don't think that anything I'm saying is inconsistent with this policy language. And there's nothing in this policy that says that you can't copy the other board members. But
So we'll get.
I guess we just need to get clarification on that.
Yeah. Would you be able to reach out to Lorraine on that? Sure. Okay. And to Pat's point, if it's not a violation, I'm not opposed to that at all. Like, it makes sense to CC folks and know. And I guess my assumption here is we're talking about emails from constituents, not necessarily like an email from the press or something like that. Would be a different.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah.
Email, text, phone calls.
Well, and that's an interesting, different aspect too, because I would expect if somebody were to email somebody individually, of course you would reply, right? Because you would have to. And I would hope that whether somebody called you, constituent called you, parent called you, you would, you gotta take a pre. We're all elected, and there's not one person that has more authority than the other individuals per se. Like 1/5 of the board vote at the end of the day.
But
And
it
so
would be worthy of us to have the discussion and then write a good policy and procedure to make sure it's pretty clear. Because, well, then after the next election, 4 of us might not be here.
Yeah. Well, I think if Superintendent Zook's able to reach out and get some clarity on this issue, she could email us all and then we could all reply all and see what we think about it.
Yes.
The biggest thing they always say is reply all.
Yeah.
And that's when people are in the action line.
Yeah.
If they're in the copy info line. So
I don't think that matters as much though. I mean, I get the spirit of it. I don't think it really matters though, because the communication, because that will almost be a way of circumventing it. Well, I'm just CCing them.
Well, no, if there's an email and everybody was in the 2 line, okay? But if there was only one person in the 2 line and everybody else was in the copy line, you're only taking action on it. That's the dance around it. So
Yeah.
and it's all about taking action. And at those other meetings there is because the legislators were very strict on who was there, because they had
There for them.
because they had a different set of rules than than public education had, and
That's
that's why
right.
they were.
The restriction at WASDA was because there was a legislator in the room too, and they were following
They're
ours.
no, they were following a
We
legislature.
couldn't be there, not them. We couldn't be there.
They didn't want more than, because that was the legislators. Whatever committee they were on, they could not do that unless they announced all of that being there. So.
All right, well, we'll get some clarity on that, and we'll proceed from there. So
Sounds good.
appreciate the discussion, and I'm sure we'll come to a place where we're all have a good understanding of what's, we all want to be responsive. We all want to follow the law. Those 2 things are clear.
Yep.
Let's just navigate a way to do it. So, okay.
I don't want to be accused of not following.
Absolutely. So with that, upcoming board meetings, so
Next one.
Yeah, June 20th. So June 20th was, there was a bit of a question as to whether or not that was a state holiday or not a state holiday. And my understanding is this year it is not.
It has become one, but not for this year.
Not for this
They've
year,
delayed it.
yes, next year.
So Juneteenth will be a date when it's considered a holiday.
Yeah.
We would want to meet, but this year there's a pass because it happened fairly quickly. I think
Right.
when they realized people had established calendars and things.
So I think our plan is to have that meeting as originally scheduled. So
On Monday, the
20th.
June 20th, Monday.
Yep, yep. And we don't have a retreat, right, on the 28th?
No, we postponed that, correct?
I don't know. It's still on the cap.
Oh, is it still listed?
Uh-huh.
Oh,
We did postpone it, yeah. We postponed it until after Regan arrives, but we don't have a new date, I don't think.
I thought it, where did I see it? Either on the website or I thought I'll stand corrected. I don't see it on here now.
do we have that hard scheduled yet, or are we waiting? No. Okay, all right.
On that note, may I?
Yeah.
Just real quick, I have, we talked a little bit when we were doing agenda planning about your self-study process that you do each year, that you're required to do as a board. And you did it a year ago, you did it online, self-study. But I was concerned about the value that might come to all of you from having a WASDA facilitated self-study, where you don't just go online and make a figure-8 pattern on your responses and be done. And I'm joking, obviously, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but a WASDA facilitated event where you do some action planning as a result of it. So I have reached out to WASDA. Tricia Lubach is the trainer, and that was a week or so ago. I can't remember, for at least a week ago, I think, when I reached out to her to see about her availability, so you could all decide if you wanted to do it or not. And I've not heard back from her yet. So if you want me to continue, I mean, I just thought I did it just to get availability information from her, and then you could all decide when and if you wanted to do it. So just know that that's kind of floating out there right now.
So
If
we would
something
first do the board assessment and then we have her come in, right?
I'm not certain the way that they do it. I would, I don't know. If you do it collectively or you do it separately and then you debrief and action plan from it, that would make sense to me. But when I hear from her, I will email you and let you know. Thank you. Thank you. All of you at the same time.
All right, and then there's also coming up, well, it's not listed on here, but we'll have the quorum, we'll have a quorum at the graduation, I think, so there'll be.
Yeah, they'll have to announce a quorum at graduation, I
We did
suppose.
3 events at once.
Oh, yeah,
that's
okay.
right.
So do you know, is there a specific time that they want the board there?
I've not heard. I know it starts at 6, but I would assume we want to be there about 5:30. I don't know, does a grad walk happen prior to 6 o'clock? Where they do the cool thing with the kindergartners and the.
Oh, that happens
So-
during the day.
Oh, it's all done during the day, not
Yeah.
that evening.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I don't know anything other than 6 o'clock. That's all I know, is that when it begins. So I would assume you'd want to be there a good half hour ahead of time, probably, just to know where to go and where to be and how it will all happen and
Okay.
everything will be in place.
Okay.
My recommendation, we meet out here like we did last year. And then we walk over, the 4 of us that are here, and Joan,
So 5:30.
5:30, 5:20 type thing, so we're not. And
Let's
Yeah.
hope the weather's good.
Yeah, that's all. Okay.
And Pat can walk from
She's gonna have to get started.
the kitchen.
I am. I got my granola bars, I'm ready to go.
Good.
Okay, so with that, we'll be going 14.04. We're going to recess into executive session where we can The board may recess into executive session to consider employment or dismissal of personnel, to review the performance of a public employee, or to consult with legal counsel, consider a position to be taken in collective bargaining, or to consider acquisition of sale or real estate. So the board will be meeting for approximately 30 minutes to review the performance of a public employee.
Okay, and may we have a 5-minute break?
Yes,
And
And do I
some
need
water.
to, my computer's
we
back
will
dead, so maybe I turn it off.
recess.
Victoria, do you want to move up here?
I need to step away. Are we,